News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. Temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of the week, unfortunately we're still going to see low pressure remaining in charge. But there are hints as we head towards Thursday, this area of high pressure will begin to topple in. And that may well set us up for a little bit more in the way of brightness, especially across the west. But in the meantime, Tuesday, Wednesday certainly remaining fairly showery, temperatures around average for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome. Good afternoon to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just gone 3 o'clock. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today in an hour is Christine Hamilton, broadcaster and author, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Coming up in today's Election Connection, Tom Harwood will give us the updates from South Cambridgeshire, where the Liberal Democrats are confident of victory. Also, the announced closure of Alton School in Hampshire. I'm asking, will Labour's plan to tax rate destroy private education in Britain? Then, for this week's Worldview, Paul Duttridge will give us the latest from what's going on Trump's side. But before we get started, let's get your latest news.
Nana, thank you. It's 1 minute past 3. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. The Shadow Chancellor says stabilising Britain's economy will only happen with a change of government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. The Conservatives say their plan is working, but the Shadow Chancellor says people are feeling worse off.
We have economic growth on its knees. We have the decline in living standards, the first time on record where living standards will be lower at the end of the Parliament than they were at the beginning. Debt at almost 100% of GDP and taxes at a 70-year high. So after 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors, 12 plans for growth, we know that it is time for change.
Next, compulsory national service for 18-year-olds will come into force if the Conservative Party wins the general election. The Prime Minister says young people will be given a choice between 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their community. It's hoped the scheme would help unite society in what Rishi Sunak called an increasingly uncertain world. Home Secretary James Cleverly told GB News that no one will be forced into military service.
The military bit of this will be limited to about 30,000 people. That bit will be voluntary. So the scheme overall will be compulsory, but the military bit will only be for people who volunteer to do that element of it.
More people trust Sir Keir Starmer on matters of national security than the Prime Minister. That's according to a new poll by More in Common for The Telegraph. The survey also showed that a majority of people are not confident in Britain's ability to defend itself against threats from Russia or China, and almost half believe the next few years will be some of the most dangerous the country has ever faced. It comes after Rishi Sunak promised to increase Britain's defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. 12 people have been injured during turbulence on a flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including the airport police and their fire and rescue department, met the Qatar Airways flight after it landed safely as scheduled shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. 6 passengers and 6 crew were injured when flight QR017 was flying over Turkey. More than 500 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats this bank holiday weekend. Home Office data shows that 227 people crossed illegally from France yesterday. It follows another 288 arrivals in 5 boats on Friday. It takes the total so far this year to nearly 10,400. A private school in Hampshire says its decision to close at the end of the current term is due to a drop in demand. Alton School caters to boys and girls from nursery to sixth form. It says that despite higher demand across the school system, independent schools are in decline. According to Independent Schools Council, average annual fees are around £18,000 a year. It warns that Labour's plan to charge 20% VAT on private school fees is looming large in parents' minds. And fans were left disappointed last night when the pop star they'd paid to see at the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester was arrested. Nicki Minaj was detained in the Netherlands after allegedly trying to take soft drugs from Schiphol Airport to another country. The 41-year-old singer of Starships and many other hits was later released after spending what she said was 5 to 6 hours in a police cell. She told fans gathered outside her hotel that she'd announce a new date for the show today. And the newly unveiled tallest roller coaster in Britain has come to a stop just a day after it opened. The Hyperia at Thorpe Park in Surrey is said to be the fastest in Britain and features Europe's tallest loop. But in a message posted to social media, the park said that due to unforeseen circumstances, the new roller coaster will be closed until Wednesday. The rest of the park does remain open, however, and anyone with pre-booked tickets is eligible for a free return visit. And Richard Sherman, whose music delighted generations of Disney fans, has died at the age of 95.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag, tuppence.
Along with his brother Robert, his music became inseparable from the mythology behind some of Disney's best-known classics. The duo won 2 Oscars for their work on the classic musical Mary Poppins. Other credits include The Jungle Book, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and the forever catchy Chin Up from Charlotte's Web. For the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Cameron. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is at GB News. We are the People's Channel. Before we get stuck into our head-to-head over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me today, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, and editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Now, they'll be going head-to-head, but let me show you what else is coming up. I'll be bringing you the latest on the general election, including statements from the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves and also Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey. More than 500 small boats have crossed the English Channel so far this bank holiday weekend. I think they mean 500 people in small boats crossing this channel. That would be most interesting, wouldn't it? That would be like an armada. But it's not. It's not 500 boats. It's 500 people have crossed in small boats. That's according to the latest official figures. Why is this still rising? A family were forced to leave a flight after a pilot refused to announce their daughter's nut allergy. So should nuts be banned on flights? I thought they were. And former Prime Minister Liz Truss said that the Tories should scrap net zero to win the next general election. Do you think that that would work? Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting also commented in the Times today that cultural rot means that NHS puts itself before the public. So should we stop treating the NHS like a religion? As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Get in touch. Post your views. gbnews.com/your say. Right, so if you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine, I've just got here. But listen, we've got loads to talk about. Now, first of all, though, economic stability can only come with change. That's what Rachel Reeves said today, Labour's Shadow Chancellor. Earlier this afternoon, she announced tough spending rules to grow the economy and keep taxes and inflation and mortgages as low as possible.
Time to turn the page on 14 years of chaos and decline under the Conservatives. And we will fight this election on the economy because of the damage that the Conservatives have done and because of the confidence that we have in our plans to turn things around. Because after 14 years, we have economic growth on its knees. We have the decline in living standards, the first time on record where living standards will be lower at the end of the Parliament than they were at the beginning. Debt at almost 100% of GDP and taxes at a 70-year high.
So this also comes as the Liberal Democrats. Their leader, Ed Davey, spoke earlier in Cambridge.
This election is our opportunity, our chance to kick this out-of-touch Conservative government out of office, our chance to elect great Liberal Democrat MPs to be strong local champions for their community, our chance for change in our country, our chance to get a fair deal that people so deserve. And people across the blue wall are saying they are fed up of this out-of-touch Conservative government.
Yeah, people are fed up. That's what some people are saying. We'll also play you a little clip of Rishi Sunak as well in just a moment. But let's welcome again to my clashers Former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, also editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Right, so I'm going to start with you. What do you think? What do you think, Norman? The Liberal Democrats have spoken. We will play a clip of Rishi Sunak in a moment. What are your thoughts on what Rachel Reeves was saying, first of all?
Well, Labour are desperate to try to appear responsible, not to make unfunded pledges, which they can be attacked for by the Conservatives and their friends in the media. But on the other hand, they've also said they're going to achieve a great deal in terms of restoring public services. They've talked about the NHS being in crisis and everything else. So they're giving the impression that they're going to actually throw money at the issue.
That's what I thought.
At the same time as pledging not to. And, of course, the Conservative budgets we've seen have actually suggested there'll be further cuts to public spending after the election if the Tories were still there in terms of departmental budgets. So none of this actually adds up in terms of a comprehensive package. Now, they've talked about one or two issues where they might have a windfall tax here and something else there. It doesn't add up to very much when you think about the figures. So I think what we're going to have, if she sticks to her plans to not increase income tax or NI, which I agree with, by the way, because they're already at record high levels, if she sticks to that, Rachel Reeves, then the question is, where's the money coming from?
Interesting question. Charlotte?
Well, I slightly bought into her saying it was all fully costed because the numbers aren't huge. She wants to bring in 6,500 more teachers. What she's going to do, she's going to scrap the non-dom VAT private schools, my sort of bugbear, close the loopholes on tax avoidance. I mean, that probably does add up to enough for 6,500 teachers. And also, she's trying to open the NHS on the weekends to try and bring those waiting lists down. I mean, it's not the most expensive pledges that she's making. I sort of believed her. I thought she was very good on Laura Koonsberg today. She was quite convincing.
Well, but doesn't that depend? So let's take the VAT on private schools. We'll be talking about that in the next hour. Shocking. 40,000 kids are likely to be out of schools. One school is already closed. If that is the trajectory of this so-called wonderful tax on these successful schools to pay for the ones that are supposedly failing, how on earth will that work? The numbers won't work, surely.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge amount of people coming into the state sector, but also in specific schools. This is what slightly worries me, because so middle-class people know where the good middle-class schools are, OK? And they maybe have enough money to move to those areas, which is something that happens already. So it's actually not going to be spread across the country. You're going to find specific areas completely flooded by middle-class mums hustling to get their kids into the smartest state schools. And I think it's going to be a real problem for them. And that is one thing they have not costed. I mean, I just don't know how they're going to do it.
Because that doesn't quite sound right to me, how you're going to take money from private schools, but then some of them are closing as a result of the extra... I know some of them are struggling anyway, so that's why this extra added burden of 20% VAT is making it impossible for some of them to survive. Then those kids will go to other schools. So this is my issue with some of the policies that they're coming out with.
Well, I mean, look, Labour's plan works if nobody leaves private schools.
Exactly.
If they all stay where they are and pay the extra money, the parents, then it adds up. But, of course, that won't be the case because many parents struggle very hard to get their kids into private schools and won't be able to afford the extra hike which will be coming. So there will be a transfer to state schools. But, you know, I agree that the pledges they've made, which are quite limited in scope, can be funded by what Rachel Reeves said. But there's a whole lot of pressure for other things which hasn't been costed. For example, they want a renaissance of the railways. Well, the railways can't be given a renaissance without some cash, to be honest with you. They're look at the Ministry of Justice and the prison system, which is grotesquely overcrowded, where they're so overcrowded, people are being actually released early, notwithstanding longer sentences.
Absurd. It's absurd.
And you've got people being held in police cells because they have nowhere to go. I mean, there's a huge backlog there. There's a huge backlog of cases in the courts. There's a whole lot of pressure from a legal aid system. You've got issues about the Environment Agency, which is grotesquely underfunded, not paying for flood defences properly. You know, the whole public sector is creaking at the edges. And Rachel Reeves' pledges, as far as they go, may be costed, but a whole lot of stuff isn't costed. Does
seem like a... Well, we'll play... this is what Rishi Sunak had to say. Let's play some of what Rishi Sunak is saying with regard to his party.
On the 5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. And he has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises that he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, How can you know that he wouldn't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister? We Conservatives have got a clear plan, with bold action, to secure our future. So let's take that message and that vision of a secure future to every corner of our United Kingdom, and let's show Labour that the British people will never be taken for granted.
Right, well, did that convince you, Charlotte? Rishi Sunak?
It didn't convince me, I'm afraid. I mean, when he said the British people will never be taken for granted, I mean, we're just not going to buy that, are we, after 14 years? And some of the other things you say, it's just unconvincing. And to say that, you know, he's Mr Stability and Keir Starmer's chaos, it's unconvincing. I mean, I'm not a natural Keir Starmer voter, but I just think it's all bluster, really, at this point for Rishi.
It is bluster. Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the public sector in the wider sense is in the shambles. You've got potholes everywhere. You've got prisoners using plastic forks to cut through walls because the prison service is falling to bits. Literally, that was a story in the papers.
Really? They use a plastic fork to cut through a wall?
Yeah, because the walls are so fragile, it's not being maintained properly. It's one of the stories in the paper last week. The fact of the matter is that the whole fabric of the public sector is in the shambles and needs a lot of money to put into it. So people look at this, they look at the state of the public sector and they say, you look at the hospital waiting list, you look at the doctors they can't get in appointments with, and they say this isn't working. So the idea that more of the same from the Conservatives is going to deliver anything is just is fantasy land. And actually, people have stopped listening to Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives. They've stopped listening to them. They're looking for A, B, C, anyone but Conservatives at the next election. They'll vote for Labour, they'll vote for Lib Dems, they'll work out who can beat them in any particular seat, and that's what will happen. And I think, here's a prediction for you, I think the Conservatives are going to face their worst ever election.
You might say that, but then some people, listening to a lot of the policies, might carry on voting Conservative, but holding their nose whilst doing so. So the reason why the Conservatives did so badly in the polls was because the turnout was so low. So the turnout was incredibly low. People didn't go vote because they didn't want to, because they didn't know who to vote for. But come the general election, do you not think that there might be a slight change?
No, this is what the Tories say. They're whistling in the wind, to be honest with you. I mean, I think if you look at all the by-elections, you look at the council results. You know, council elections in May, the Tories came third behind the Lib Dems. That's where they are now.
Nothing? You can't do anything, can you? Can you say anything?
I don't think so. I know what you mean about holding your nose, but I just think... I actually kind of agree it's going to be the worst ever for the Conservatives because, you know, people just want change. And actually, I think people are quite unconvinced that Keir Starmer will provide change, even though he says it 8 times every time he speaks.
Well, so does Ed Davey. They're all saying it.
Yeah, and Ed Davey just completely said the same thing. But the fact is, it is a change, and everyone's just going to go for a punt and say, God, well, at least it's something different. Let's give it a go. And if during that time the Conservatives reform, re-strength, gather a new team sheet, and in 4 years' time, maybe some of those Conservative voters will go back again.
I think that's right.
And very briefly, reform. Let's have a quick chat about them.
At the local elections in May, this month, Reform won 2 seats across the whole country. 2 seats. They're going nowhere. What they will do is eat into the Conservative vote, but win those seats.
All right, OK. Well, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Get in touch ASAP. We'd love to hear what you think. But next up, more than 500 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel so far, just this bank holiday weekend alone. That is according to the latest official figures. I think it was 515. That's quite a few. And they've crossed the Channel. That's since the beginning of the year. We've had 10,397 if you add it all together. The figure is 36% ahead of the 7,326 migrants who arrived by this point last year, so that's quite an increase. So joining me to discuss, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, and also Editor-at-Large on the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Right, Charlotte Griffiths, I'm coming to you. So more migrants, one weekend, we're almost 3,000 higher than we were. That's shocking.
Yeah, it's quite shocking, given that also the weather's been very bad this weekend. And everyone says, look, be prepared, it's the summer, the numbers are going to go up because the weather's so lovely. Well, the numbers are going up and the weather isn't very lovely at all. And we hit that 10,000 number in July last year. And it's obviously quite worrying that we've hit that number already, but clearly this must have influenced Rishi's decision to call the election a bit early, don't you think?
Do you think? Because some of them were put off with Rwanda, do you think?
On July the 5th, say, because Keir Starmer's first day, say that happens, he'll be having this huge influx of lovely sunny weather, loads of boats coming in, and he'll have to face the problem that Rishi's been tackling all year. So, you know, maybe Rishi will have the last laugh, even if he doesn't win the election.
Well, that's what I thought. Do you think that was part of the plan, Norman, that actually, if he called the election now, like July the 4th, come July the 5th, as Charlotte said, the weather will be fabulous?
I think it's part of the plan to call the election because he knew he couldn't stop the boats. And he couldn't stop the migrants, and he was going to go through a summer of people coming in, and yet another of his pledges not being met. So he wanted to avoid that.
But you could say that the people who come in on the weekend, having heard that he's likely to be deposed as the Prime Minister, and know that Rwanda isn't likely to happen under Sir Keir Starmer. I mean,
well,
people are confident in new confidence.
Under Rishi Sunak, to be perfectly frank.
Well, you don't know that, though.
Well, it's not happened so far.
Yeah, but with the new changes and everything, it could have happened, and it did appear to deter people from the United Kingdom.
Well, now there's more people come in this weekend that he will deport to Rwanda in a year, even if he gets the scheme up and running. That's the truth.
But do you think the part of his plan, though, you say this, perhaps the influx... basically, we'll never know why they all decided to come 500 of them on the weekend. It could be because of what was said, but do you think that that's why he did it? Because he knew that, not that he couldn't control it, but then it would be a problem for Keir Starmer.
No, I think the reason he went early, if you're asking me that question, is partly because the boats were going to continue all through the summer. It would look embarrassing. Secondly, because he's worried about reform, getting their act together and getting the candidates in place who wanted to go before then. And thirdly, the economic situation is not as bright as the Chancellor would say. The IMF this week warned the Chancellor not to make a cut in national insurance because the country couldn't afford it.
Well, I mean, those are all reasons, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's going to be a very exciting election. Right, if you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, former Prime Minister Liz Truss. She said today that the Tories should scrap net zero to win the election. Is she right? Do you think they can win simply by scrapping that? Next, a family were forced to leave a plane before it left the runway after their 12-year-old daughter, who suffers from a nut allergy, was put at risk. Should we ban nuts from airplanes?
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know what, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him for go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling him that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know what? If I was Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, if you just tuned in, welcome on board. It's just coming up to 25 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, this story really got my goat because I have allergies, and I'll tell you a story later. But a family were forced to leave a plane before it left the runway after their 12-year-old daughter, who suffers from a nut allergy, could have been put at risk as the flight captain reportedly refused to announce the allergy to other passengers. Now, this is an apparent grey area, and currently airlines can decide to make such announcements on a case-by-case basis. But what do you think? I mean, do you think that they should show some compassion, in particular with a nut allergy, which can be in the air, or if somebody's eaten a nut, it's quite dangerous, and can lead to anaphylactic shock and death. So this is quite a serious allergy. But welcome, if you just tuned in. Let's welcome again to my panel, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, and also editor-at-large on The Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Right, I'm going to start with you. Norman Baker, do you have any allergies you can dare to share?
I don't mind sharing them, but I haven't got any as far as I know, so I'm all right.
I'm allergic to the Liberal Democrats. No, to you, no, I'm not allergic. I'm allergic to dust, actually.
Well, people have all sorts of allergies, I think actually have more allergies these days than they used to have when I was a kid. I think it's to be an environmental thing, partly. But anyway, on this particular story, I mean, I think it's quite shocking that the airline's taken the view it did, because it's not much of an inconvenience, is it, to other passengers not to eat nuts? We're not asking them to do very much. And obviously it was very deeply distressing for the family to have to leave the plane at a vast cost, £5,000, I think, or alternatively risk their daughter's life, because that's what it comes down to. I mean, he says, the father, looking at this press report, that he couldn't find anyone to talk to the airline before he got on the plane.
Well, I thought, as part of equality law, that some allergies would be seen as a disability and therefore would be treated as such, and therefore, if they did that, then they would be in a lot of trouble. That's what I thought. I thought there was something in equality law.
It's a disability. I'm
well,
afraid
it can be.
If you
have a nut allergy, it certainly is.
Well, no, listen, if you have a nut allergy and go into anaphylactic shock on a plane, I'm not disputing that that is a very dangerous situation because you cannot be treated. And there was that very sad case of the girl who ate a pret-a-manger sandwich and died.
Yeah.
But you're not going to like me if you've got allergies, because I sort of agree. I think, couldn't she just get through a plane without eating nuts? I mean, No,
but it's not her. See, with a nut allergy, if somebody even talks to you having eaten nuts, or if it's in the air, that can put you into... So it's a very serious... It's like... It's almost like... it's almost like, in some respects, like a contact dermatitis type thing. So if somebody's touched that thing and they touch you, then you will suffer the allergic reaction. If it's in the air and it makes contact with you, then it becomes it's quite a serious condition. So it's even if you eat the nut and you breathe on the person who has the allergy, they can go into anaphylaxis. So it's very, very serious.
Okay, well, slightly more serious then, but I'm still allergic to allergy culture. I can't bear allergy culture in the fuss. And when you go to a restaurant and they say, have you got any allergies? I mean, if you had an allergy, you'd say, it's over the top, I think. She just sat in between her parents. I'm going to get so much hate for this. In between her parents, and they could have not eaten nuts, and she could have been all safely in her
it's
cocoon.
Not. Well, that would be great if the allergy was just limited to you actually eating the nut or you coming into contact with the nut. But unfortunately, this allergy, and for many people, is the fact that somebody has even eaten, spoken to you, and that breath of that nut was in the air conditioning or in the system, or you sit next to somebody, or they open the bag of nuts. Even the smell of the nuts can cause you anaphylaxis.
God, well, in that case, he did the right thing to take her off the plane, because it sounds like an absolute death trap.
But do you think then that with serious allergies of that severity, that perhaps there needs to be more, for example, in an airplane where you're in a confined, enclosed space?
Well, often on aeroplanes you don't get nuts anymore. You get those little packets.
Well, that's why
now,
a lot of them don't do it.
Biscuity things. Yeah. Well, then presumably that's an airline-wide policy, and so she would have been fine.
Well, she would have been fine if perhaps there had been a warning out there, so that if anyone had nuts, they don't eat the nuts on the plane. That's what it is. I don't think it's a big deal to say to somebody, for the duration of this flight, please do not eat nuts, because we have people who are allergic to them.
But what if somebody had eaten the nuts just before they got on the plane, and then they were breathing their dangerous nut air on the plane,
well, that's a
and
risk.
They hadn't been warned because they'd eaten it in the queue waiting to get on the plane? I mean, they'll obviously have to find a proper policy for this because it sounds fraught with difficulty.
Well, now you can see why it becomes almost like a disability, because you can't do things because of it.
Yeah, the policy needs to be, I think the airlines probably should avoid serving nuts because nuts are a particular allergy that cause death in certain circumstances. So they can probably do with having biscuits rather than nuts.
But then you have to stop people buying nuts in pret-a-manger before they get on the plane.
You can't stop it. You can't eliminate risk from life entirely.
So then the safest thing is to get off the plane because you cannot eliminate that risk.
Well, the safest thing is if you're aware there are nuts on the plane to do that. But what I'm saying in this situation is the airlines can reduce the risk by not having nuts in the first place. And given they had nuts on the plane and it was drawn to their attention that this particular child had a health risk, that it wouldn't have been very onerous, I don't think, to ask other passengers not to eat any nuts for that journey.
So you think that would be a perfectly reasonable
I think in that situation, that's what the pilot could have done, and he or she didn't do it.
Yeah, I think, I don't understand that at all. But let me... but the Sun Express spokesperson said that the airline takes its passengers' safety very seriously, and we refrain from making those kinds of announcements as, like many other airlines, we cannot guarantee an allergen-free environment on our flights, nor prevent other passengers from bringing food items containing allergies on board. So that gives the presumption that they don't serve nuts themselves, but they can't control if others do that. But I think an announcement just to inform other passengers, I don't think would be a problem. And if I were flying that plane, I would have done it. Right, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Next, former Prime Minister Liz Truss has said today that the Tories should scrap net zero to win the election. Would that be enough? First, though, let's get your latest news headlines with Ray.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. 3:30, rapidly approaching 3:31. Right, more on that breaking news now. 12 people have been injured during turbulence on a flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including airport police and their fire and rescue department, met the Qatar Airways flight after it landed safely, as scheduled, shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. 6 passengers and 6 crew were injured when flight QR017 was flying over Turkey. We're going to keep you up to date with this developing story as we get more info. OK, the Shadow Chancellor says Britain's economy will only stabilise with a change of government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. The Tories say their plan is working, but the Shadow Chancellor says people are feeling worse off. Compulsory national service for 18-year-olds will come into force if the Conservative Party wins the general election. The Prime Minister says young people will be given a choice between 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their communities. Labour described it as a headline-grabbing gimmick. More than 500 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats this bank holiday weekend. Home Office data showing that 227 crossed illegally from France yesterday. Follows another 288 arrivals in 5 boats on Friday, taking the total so far this year to nearly 10,400. A private school in Hampshire says its decision to close at the end of the current term is due to a drop in demand. Alton School caters to boys and girls from nursery to sixth form. It says that despite higher demand across the school system, independent schools are in decline. Fees for schools outside of the public system are, on average, around £18,000 a year. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Right. Well, now, time for our great British giveaway. £20,000 could be yours. Don't miss out, as lines are going to close this Friday. Here's all the details you need for your chance to win the cash.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Right, coming up, Wes Streeting has commented in The Times that cultural rot means the NHS puts itself before the public. So is it time to stop treating the NHS like a religion?
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So
It does.
We wish her
What's
very, very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, forever. People forever go
On the
there.
Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know I
It's all about priorities.
But, you surely, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him to
3
go.
miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
38 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is The Clash. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss, she said today that the Tories should scrap net zero to win the election, delivering policies the public actually want. Now, this comes as gas bills could rise by £1,000 to pay for wind power, as the Energy Secretary is considering moving green levies from electricity bills to gas bills, or shifting them into general taxation. So is Liz Truss right, or even slightly on the right track? Right, let's welcome again to my clashers former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, and also Editor-at-Large for the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte Griffiths, do you think that's going to be enough, is it, net zero?
I think, on the whole, listening to Liz Truss to win an election isn't your first port of call, but I think she's sort of on something with this. I think the moving the levies from electricity to gas is really unfair, because obviously the poorest people in society are often the ones that use gas.
Exactly.
And electricity everyone uses, so it's fair. And it just goes to show how messy this whole net zero thing is. If you're moving levies from one type of energy to another, it's just a complete mess. So I think she's sort of onto something. But, I think the fact she's opining on how Rishi should win an election is potentially a little bit out of order. But seeing as she's intervened, I have to say, begrudgingly, I think I might agree with her on this one.
You agree with her on that. Norman Baker.
Well, we had nuts on planes, didn't we? We were having nuts in Parliament now, it seems to me. I don't know, she's on to something.
She's not a nut, she's a lettuce.
A lettuce, OK. Well, let's just forget that and what she says. Look, I mean, there's two things here. First of all, would it win the election for the Tories? No, it wouldn't. I mean, what? This is way down the agenda in terms of what people are concerned about. They're concerned about the economy, they're concerned about the NHS, they might be concerned about the potential for international disruption. But
you could argue that is part of the economy, though, if you think about it, with the amount we're paying in energy and also, the cost of net zero.
The cheapest form of energy is coming from offshore wind at the moment. Actually,
but offshore wind is subsidised, and also right now, all the equipment required to make those offshore wind farms all use fossil fuels.
Well, I mean, there's an issue about fossil fuels further down the line, but actually, per unit of electricity, if you're paying for that, then offshore wind is actually the best form of energy to keep the cost down.
Yes, but you can only get the energy when the wind is blowing.
Well, you can have a mixture of energy. You have a mixture of energy. There's all sorts of potential renewable sources, including, for example, tidal power we don't maximise, solar energy, which is now being used on farms across the country.
You mean as in the solar farms that they're putting everywhere instead of planting crops?
Geothermal energy in Cornwall from hot rocks. There's all sorts of things you can do. We're interested in energy security in this country. That's a big thing, particularly with our threat from the Soviet Union, Russia now, and from China. We have to be as self-sufficient as possible in energy, and that means actually renewable energy, because that's what we've got a lot of. We're blessed in this country with that. So I think the idea that this will win the election for the Tories is just, frankly, pie in the sky.
Well, but I think she makes a valid point, though, because, listen, we all want clean energy and we want to be energy sufficient and own our own resources and things. But some of the things they're suggesting with regard to net zero, like some of these wind farms, for example, are not as profitable or as cheap as you're saying. And many of them are heavily subsidised, though, aren't they? They're being heavily subsidised by gas and fossil fuels and things like that. So, and also they require fossil fuels to exist.
Yeah, I agree, and I can never forget going to Cornwall in the summer growing up when wind turbines were first invented. And as a child, I remember saying to my father, "Why don't any of them spin, Daddy?" And they still don't, because as you say, it requires wind to actually work, and then it requires electricity to actually be able to power things like vehicles, which it doesn't always very efficiently. It's not always easy to run a car on electricity, so there's all that coming down the track. But in terms of actual electioneering, Labour obviously is kind of lost the Green vote in that he's scrapped his big green policy. So, why would you scrap net zero now? I actually think maybe it is something to be done in the long term. But in terms of the election 6 weeks away, don't scrap net zero now. It would make no sense. You'd lose those people who had maybe, somehow defected from Starmer.
And something that people don't often talk about as well is the effect on the animals and the environment. So you put those things in the sea, you affect all the sea creatures. All these supposedly green people with their green credentials have forgotten, all the birds that have to avoid these turbines, all the animals around them, the hum, these are real things these are real drawbacks.
There's a lot less harm done to animals from wind turbines than there is from the generation of carbon and other pollutants from fossil fuels. And as far as subsidies are concerned...
Well, that's what you're saying, but that's not really... I don't think that's true.
I'm sorry, I think it is.
Where have you got that from, though?
Well, I was energy spokesman for my party for many years.
Yeah, but that's many years ago. They didn't have all this then.
Well, we were arguing for it, as a matter of fact. But, look, I mean, if you look at subsidies for fuel, for energy... The worst case of energy subsidy is, in fact, nuclear power. We were told in the 1950s it's going to be too cheap to meter. That was the phrase he used. It's going to cost $70 billion, at least, just to deal with the residue of ponds at Sellafield, just for that one issue. I mean, nuclear power is enormously expensive.
Well, I'm not saying that nuclear power... I think that nuclear power also has its big drawbacks, and there are many problems along the line with that as well. But I'm questioning whether wind energy... As maybe one part of the mix, it's fine, but I think the race to net zero and the assumption that it is carbon that is causing it, I think there's more to it than that. And I would like to see more scientists looking at the whole process and not so convinced that carbon is the absolute enemy. I just think that there's more to it. I'm not convinced I don't see why we were all sort of silenced about speaking about it.
Well, say hypothetically they found that carbon wasn't the enemy,
Exactly.
and you could restart all those coal factories.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't want to be too Thatcherite about this, but you know, imagine those communities that would be, you know, there'd be regeneration of. And I'm not saying coal, you know, is the answer, but I'm also not saying electricity is necessarily the answer. You know, there's so many unknowns here. As you say, you know, it could do with some more scientists working a lot harder, and the whole world's going to look very different in 2030 and 2035. Who knows what we may have discovered by then?
I'd like them to talk more. I'd like them to question all these things. In particular, I'd like them to question net zero. And I'd like to know, you know, remember when they said that diesel, oh, yeah, everyone should be driving diesel. Then they found out that, oh, hang on, no, diesel is the spawn of Satan, let's get rid of that, because they hadn't worked out the nitrates in the air. Instead, they were too busy looking at something else. So that's my point with this, is that I want the scientists to talk more. I want it to be open discussion. I want them to explain to us why it's carbon and to look at other factors as well.
It's also come back to energy security. We want to generate our own electricity.
Absolutely.
That's one thing. And actually, relying on overseas gas and everything else isn't a very sensible policy for our defence, as a matter of fact. So there's that aspect to it. Secondly, there have been days in which the majority of energy in this country has been produced from renewable sources already without any further investment. So we're getting there and we're becoming self-sufficient. That's a good thing.
Well, I think that's a good thing, but let's not delude ourselves in thinking that it's cheaper right now, because it certainly isn't. It's costing us a fortune and it is subsidised. But it's just coming up to 46 minutes after 3 o'clock. Coming up, Rishi Sunak called a general election this week. We'll bring you the latest from the GBNews viewer poll. Next, as Wes Streeting has commented in The Times that cultural rot means that the NHS puts itself before the public. Is it time to stop treating the NHS like a religion?
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly, temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of the week, unfortunately we're still going to see low pressure remaining in charge. But there are hints as we head towards Thursday, this area of high pressure will begin to topple in. And that may well set us up for a little bit more in the way of brightness, especially across the west. But in the meantime, Tuesday, Wednesday certainly remaining fairly showery, temperatures around average for the time of year.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 49 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is the GB News. We are the People's Channel. Don't forget, you can also download the GB News app. I'm Nana Akua. Now, Wes Streeting has commented in the Times that cultural rot means that the NHS puts itself before the public. Now, he also said that he won't give striking doctors their demands for 35% pay rises. I mean, that is madness. Who gets like a third of a pay rise immediately, especially from the public purse? He said that he wants to work with doctors in a respectful way, but will need to negotiate pay. And speaking at the Hay Festival, he discussed his plans for the NHS if Labour wins, where he'll inherit record waiting lists and ongoing pay disputes. So is he right? Is he right to be talking in this way? Is he on the right track? And is it actually his time to stop treating the NHS like a religion, if you actually think that people do that? Well, joining me now, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker and also editor-at-large of The Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Well, I'm going to start with you, Norman Baker. Is he right? Do you think the NHS is treated like some sort of religion?
I think it's treated with kid gloves. And I think it's very encouraging and quite surprising to me that someone from Wes Streeting's background and his party has actually come out to challenge the NHS in this way. It's something you might expect from, dare I say, the right wing rather than from Wes Streeting and the Labour Party. But I think they're right to say what matters is the treatment people get rather than the protection of the NHS as an institution itself.
Well, you see it a lot as well in terms of the whistleblowers and things like that, that the whistleblowers try and expose things and in the end they're the ones that risk being in trouble for telling the truth. Charlotte?
Yeah, and look at the contaminated blood scandal.
Oh, that was awful,
I mean, it's
awful.
Obviously, it's actually a terrible, terrible moment for the NHS right now because it couldn't be worse. And I think the culture of never saying out loud anything bad about the NHS is coming to an end. And, you know, the waiting lists are a big reason for that, the contaminated blood, the whistleblowers being punished. And I think we all used to watch Call the Midwife, didn't we? And think, oh, the NHS. And at the time, it was a noble aim, free at the point of use, lovely scenes of your GP cycling over on his bicycle to visit you in your village. But we all know that's not the NHS anymore. And I mean, I personally, I sort of still worship. I've had 3 children. My first baby worshipped the NHS. My midwives were saints. By the 3rd baby, when I got left in a waiting room to have a baby, nobody believed me, nobody listened to me. I was told I was an inconvenience. It was a busy day and there weren't enough staff. And why was I having this baby? And even though they were busy, kind of thing. That was the attitude.
Wow.
And I'm afraid, even midwives, you know, I think they're starting to be. You know, the jaded, I think is what I'd say. You know, and I know that they're saints, and I know that everybody that works in the NHS is supposed to be a saint, but actually,
they're not, are they?
They're not allowed to be because they're overstretched and they're starting to make hard, sort of unkind decisions. And unfortunately, the NHS isn't what it used to be, and we have to be able to say that.
Do you think there's a level of bitterness that's evolved within the NHS, partly for the fact that I don't think they're paid enough? They're seeing the politicians with their extra, was it £93,000 a year? I'm sorry, but that's a lot of money, even if they don't think it is. I know they're politicians and public servants, but part of service shouldn't be about how much you're getting, if that's what they think. Because if they believe that, then they should pay themselves less, because the nurses are doing part of this as a service. Do you think they're taken advantage of?
Yeah, no, I think nurses are taking advantage of it, and I think it's a real shame for them that they have, in some cases, not all. I mean, in my example, when I was left in the waiting room, those were pretty hard-nosed, pretty grumpy midwives and nurses because they were just overworked, underpaid, and there's no question they should be paid more. And but I think they are being taken advantage of, totally. They're being left to do their jobs badly, and they've got no choice, and they can't fight against the waiting list themselves, and they're forced to make phone calls. You know, my mother had her hysterectomy this year rearranged 4 times.
Wow.
Somebody at the end of the line has to break that news to a 67-year-old woman, and it probably makes them pretty hard and pretty hard-nosed after a while.
Do you think part of this, Norman, is to do with the fact that they've gone to a system that's almost like a sort of teepee, but upside down? So you've got the people, the money at the bottom where it really needs to be is at the top where all the management are and things like that. And would you, because it's the bureaucratic structure that seems absolutely absurd.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many reorganisations to the NHS and health services generally in the last 20 years. I mean, as an MP, I lost track of who was running what. It kept changing every 6 months. But you're right. I mean, if you go to a hospital, you'll find the parking spaces at the entrance are reserved for the managers, not for the doctors or for the consultants. That's where it is. I went to the Eastbourne District General Hospital not too long ago, and I demanded to go into this ward. I wasn't the one who wanted to show me. I went in myself, the people were calling out for the matrons, calling out for the nurses. Nothing was happening. I went to see the woman at the top who was sitting at a table, the NHS nurse. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm doing patient plans. I said, well, what about these people who are down there wanting attention? She said, well, I've got to do the patient plans, but the trouble is I've got no ability to enforce them because afterwards I go off shift and they just get left.
This is just typical, isn't it? This is typical NHS. What do you think? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. I will read some of those comments out, but still to come. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax raid destroy private education in Britain? And next up, though, my election connection. Do not go anywhere. I'll leave you with the weather. See you in a moment.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. Temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of the week, unfortunately we're still going to see low pressure remaining in charge. But there are hints as we head towards Thursday, this area of high pressure will begin to topple in. And that may well set us up for a little bit more in the way of brightness, especially across the west. But in the meantime, Tuesday, Wednesday certainly remaining fairly showery, temperatures around average for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not lying, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. I'm just waiting for another message going, it's not me and my panel, it's my panel and I. Some people get very annoyed. Me and my panel. Right, this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. Right, coming up in today's Election Connection, Tom Harwood will give us the updates from the South Cambridgeshire, where the Liberal Democrats were very confident of victory. Then on the way, the announced closure of Alton School in Hampshire. I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax raid destroy private education in Britain? Now, this week's Worldview, Paul Duddridge will get the latest from what's going on stateside. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Ray.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 4. Our top stories this hour. The Shadow Chancellor says Britain's economy will only stabilise with a change of government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of new spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. The Tories say their current plan is working, but the Shadow Chancellor says people feel worse off.
We have economic growth on its knees. We have the decline in living standards, the first time on record where living standards will be lower at the end of the Parliament than they were at the beginning. Debt at almost 100% of GDP and taxes at a 70-year high. So after 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors, 12 plans for growth, we know that it is time for change.
18-year-olds face compulsory national service if the Tories win the next general election. The Prime Minister says young people will be given a choice of 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their communities. Rishi Sunak says he hopes the scheme will help to unite society in an increasingly uncertain world. Speaking earlier to GB News, Home Secretary James Cleverly said no one will be forced into the military.
The military bit of this will be limited to about 30,000 people. That bit will be voluntary. So the scheme overall will be compulsory, but the military bit will only be for people who volunteer to do that element of it.
More people trust Sir Keir Starmer on matters of national security than the Prime Minister. That's according to a new poll for The Telegraph. The survey also found a majority of people are not confident that Britain can defend itself against threats from Russia or China. Meanwhile, almost half believe the next few years will be some of the most dangerous that the country has ever faced. It comes after Rishi Sunak promised to increase Britain's defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Well, 12 people have been injured during turbulence on a flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including their airport police and fire and rescue teams, met the Qatar Airways flight after it landed safely shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. 6 passengers and 6 crew were injured whilst it was flying over Turkey. More than 500 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats so far this bank holiday weekend. Home Office data shows that 227 people crossed illegally from France yesterday. Follows another 288 arrivals in 5 boats on Friday. That takes the total so far this year to nearly 10,400. A private school in Hampshire is closing at the end of the current term due to a drop in demand and adverse political factors. Oldham School, which caters for nursery to 6th form ages, has been open since 1938. Comes as demand for independent school places continues to fall, with average fees at around £18,000 a year. Fans were left disappointed last night when the pop star that they'd paid to see at the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester was arrested. Nicki Minaj was detained in the Netherlands after allegedly trying to take soft drugs through Schiphol Airport. The 41-year-old Starships singer was later released after spending what she said was 5 to 6 hours in a police cell. She told fans outside her hotel that the show will be rescheduled. The newly unveiled tallest roller coaster in Britain has come to an abrupt stop just a day after it opened. The Hyperia at Thorpe Park in Surrey is said to be the fastest in Britain and features Europe's tallest loop. But in a message posted to social media, the park said that due to unforeseen circumstances, the new coaster will be closed until Wednesday. The rest of the park remains open and anyone with pre-booked tickets is eligible for a free return visit. And finally, Richard Sherman, whose music delighted generations of Disney fans, has died at the age of 95.
The birds, tuppence a bag.
Along with his brother, Robert, he created some of Disney's best-known classics. The duo also won 2 Oscars for their work on the musical Mary Poppins. Other credits include The Jungle Book, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Chin Up from Charlotte's Web. For all the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Well, before we get stuck into the debates, for my election connection, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax raid destroy private education in Britain? Alton School, a private school in Hampshire, has announced that it will shut its doors for the final time this summer, with parents describing the likelihood of victory for Keir Starmer being the final nail in a coffin. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax raid destroy private education in Britain? Then at 4:50, it's World View. We're across live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Duttridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. We'll get the latest on Donald Trump as Trump prepares for the closing arguments in his all-important New York trial. In the meantime, Nigel Farage is focusing his attention on the US election, and questions are arising about whether he will officially join Trump's team. Then at 5, it's this week's Outside Now. My mystery guest today is an award-winning producer, songwriter and record-breaking Apprentice contestant. I've given you a little bit of clues. It's not as fuzzy as it normally is. Who is he? That's coming up in the next hour. Remember, send me your thoughts, your posts, your comments. Visit gbnews.com/yoursay. Right, so now it's time, Dave, my election connection, to call it this. And let's have a look at some of those latest updates. Right, the GB News People poll taken from the GB News audience said that Labour, 47% of them are supporting Labour. So that's our poll, that's our viewers, that's what they're thinking. Let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer said after he heard about the election announcement.
Most importantly of all, we do all this with a new spirit of service. Country first. Party second. a rejection of the gesture politics you will see in this campaign, I have no doubt, from the Tories and the SNP. I'm well aware of the cynicism people hold towards politicians at the moment. But I came into politics late, having served our country as leader of the Crown Prosecution Service. And I helped the police service in Northern Ireland to gain the consent of all communities. Service of our country is the reason and the only reason why I am standing here now asking for your vote.
So he's asking for your vote. Well, what did our viewers think of the Conservatives? Oh, Reform, then let's take a look at Reform. So 12% of the GBNews in our People poll, 12% of them were in support of Reform. Let's have a listen to Richard Tice and his thoughts.
Everybody feels worse off after 14 years of Tory failure. That's the result of incompetence and these experts, along with weak, feeble politicians who have broken Britain. And sadly, that failure of the establishment and the experts manifests itself in the great scandals that we hear about.
Richard Tice's Reform Party. So next up, the Conservative Party. Let's take a look at them. Our viewers thought 20%. They had 20% support in our People's poll. So effectively, they're in second place. Labour 27% ahead. Have a listen to Rishi Sunak.
On the 5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. And he has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises that he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, how can you know that he wouldn't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister? We Conservatives have got a clear plan, with bold action, to secure our future. So let's take that message and that vision of a secure future to every corner of our United Kingdom, and let's show Labour that the British people will never be taken for granted.
So never be taken for granted. Let's have a look at what the polling for the Lib Dems then on our poll. 9% support from the GBNews People's poll. That is what they said. Now, by the way, this poll was taken after the announcement for the election. Let's have a listen to Ed Davey.
For far too long, people across the United Kingdom have been let down and taken for granted by this Conservative government and this out-of-touch Conservative party. But with this election, we have the chance to win the change our country so desperately needs.
And finally, let's take a look at the Greens. What were the thoughts of the Greens? Well, 8%, so they were not far behind the Liberal Democrats. Again, this poll was taken after the announcement for the election. Let's hear what the Greens had to say.
We all know politics is broken and change is desperately needed. We're sick of politicians who don't say what they mean, who make decisions for their own careers, their donors or their party leaders. We need politicians who listen and work for us, our futures, our children and grandchildren. The Conservatives are on track for an historic loss at the next election, and we all know there's no chance of them getting elected here in Bristol Central. My first vote will make sure we get them out of government, but your vote can do so much more than that.
Is the leader of the Greens, Carla Denyer, talking there with regard to the Liberal the co-leader. She's the Greens co-leader. Right, so let's have a listen. Tom Hardwood, he was actually there in Cambridgeshire earlier today where Ed Davey was campaigning.
We're here in South Cambridgeshire, a vital target for the Liberal Democrats. While they haven't been hitting the major headlines with a national campaign, the Liberal Democrats do tend to dig in specific areas and fight a highly targeted battle. It's not about the wider vote share for the Lib Dems, it's more about those targets and getting the vote out where it counts. And here in South Cambridgeshire could be one of those seats. It's been Tory for as long as people can remember, but recently the council here turned Lib Dem. And that's where they think they've got an opportunity. Of course, just up the road in the city of Cambridge, that used to be a Lib Dem seat. It's currently held by the Labour Party. But there's been demographic change as people can't afford to live in Cambridge City anymore. They're spreading out to the surrounding areas. It's a pattern that we're seeing in many cities across the country as the housing crisis grips and people tend to move further out. It means those voting patterns move further out and potentially younger voters living in areas that were traditionally older areas. And this is where the Lib Dems think that they can get a bit of a foothold in what might be known as the Blue Wall. That's certainly what Lib Dem leader Ed Davey calls areas like this. And what's interesting here is that this is a new constituency. South Cambridgeshire, as it was in 2019, is being divided in two, partly because there's been much population growth in this area. The current Tory MP for this seat has gone to the top half of the seat, leaving the bottom half of the seat, the south portion of this seat, without an incumbent MP. And that's another big advantage for the Lib Dems. They think they can win here. But this is all, of course, on a day that is being dominated by one issue, and that's the Prime Minister's surprising pledge on national service. I've had the opportunity to speak to just a couple of people here, and it doesn't seem like it's going down particularly well. However, this might be more about the Prime Minister trying to shore up some of those voters who've shifted to reform, rather than any voters who might be leaning in a more Liberal Democrat direction. Only time will tell.
That's Tom Harwood. Right, so let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Christine Hamilton, I'm coming to you first. So you saw the announcement, first of all, of the election. Was that a surprise to you, 4th of July?
Yeah, I think it was. Anyone who says it wasn't a bit of a surprise, unless they were the half dozen people that Rishi consulted, I think it's probably not telling entirely the truth. Yeah, I was surprised. My personal view is, for what it's worth, is I actually think Rishi's had enough.
Do you think so?
I think he's had enough. I don't think he enjoys the job anymore. I think his wife hates it. I think she hates being in the bubble. She hates being at number 10, everything that goes with it. She hates him being ravaged and savaged all the time by the press and by the public. And I honestly think he's just going to have 6 weeks of hell and then he'll be off. That's what I think he's done. He cannot think he's going to win. I mean, he's not a stupid man. He cannot win. There's no way he's going to win. So I just honestly think he thinks, let's go now.
Well, if you've got, people like Rachel Reeves actually in the Mail on Sunday, or writing in the Daily Mail, and actually some people may say that it doesn't even sound like the press are on supporting in any way.
I think Mr Sunak is far too professional for that. I don't think he's going to put his family's interest before the country's interest. That's just my opinion. I think...
But some people would think it's in the interest of the country for him to go.
I know, but your view is that he's just had enough. And if he was an animal, he just wants to be put down. My view is that, well, he's got 6 weeks. No, but he's lost all will to live politically, is what you're saying.
That is what I think,
I think he's losing the will to live politically, but I think he's a fighter, and I don't think we should underestimate him. And just to stick with what you feel for the time being, I think we could elongate this 6 weeks for another 6 months. He's still got a short lifespan, hasn't he? He's got a limited amount of time if they are going to flop, and I think the consensus is that the Conservatives are going to flop. I was listening to Nigel Farage, and I'd never thought about it. Farage is on the money so frequently, and he seems to think in a different sort of plane than a lot of other people. And he was saying that it's almost to do with him. So the threat of Farage is so significant that he wants Farage not to have any time to prepare to go for a seat.
Well, that's what well, to be honest, that's one of the considerations and one of the main considerations that I saw there. Christine's laughing, but I actually think my point is this. It will take... Reform are not completely formed, as it were.
Correct.
They need 630, and Richard Tice said he'll put forward 630 people to seats and everything else like that. That's going to take him time. In 6 months, maybe, but in 6 weeks, I don't think so. And I think that's a very clever move from Rishi Sunak.
I think that Tice is wrong to put up in all 630 seats. I think he's wrong to put up against the Tory MPs.
Why?
Because all he will do is let more Labour voters in. I think there's a certain Tory MPs who I think, if I was Tice, I would say, right, To a very large extent, we share the same values. We're not going to compete against them. But anyway, that's his decision. Honestly, I think I could have told you, and I did say months ago, that there was no way Nigel Farage was ever going to stand in this election, because if he did, there was only one of two outcomes, neither of which was palatable to him. One is that he would lose for the 8th or 9th time, and he doesn't want to do that. And the other is that he would be elected, and he would be one tiny little right-wing cog in a Labour government on the backbenches of the House of Commons. Well, he doesn't want that. He's far better off in America.
He's far more powerful being unelected, and also in America, where if he does become one of Donald Trump's right-hand men, then he will be very powerful. And in fact, he could be the negotiator from America to the UK. So we will probably still.
He never wanted
the
to
Labour
be a
Party will probably need him. Right. Well, this is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. Coming up, World View. We'll cross live to speak to Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast, to get the latest in the States. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax raid destroy private education in Britain? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Will Labour's planned tax raid destroy private education in Britain? Send me your thoughts at gbnews.com/your say.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the UK's most popular baby names have been revealed, with Noah and Olivia again topping the annual list. In at number 2 is Mohammed for boys. List is on the screen here. Number 3 for boys is George. Then it goes Olivia. Then it's Leo, Arthur, and so on. And for girls, so Olivia is number 1. Then Amelia, Isla, Ava, Lily, Ivy, Freya. There we go. Any of those names take your pick? Where's Dawn, by the way?
Well, yeah, there's on the Telegraph website, right, there's a really good way linked into this where you can actually put your name into the search engine, and these are names from 2022, by the way, and it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in. It's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not a full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring in this list. We are dying out. Our names will soon be gone forever, and I feel victimised by it.
Likewise, I should think we should start a campaign group and go on a protest march through London.
Cans, what do you make about Mohammed being number 2 for boys' names?
You know, I'm not going to comment on people. You know, they're going to call what they want to call. What I find interesting is people that do double barrel because they can't decide, and you know, a lot of people do that, and that's a bit difficult because I think you should just pick a name. You know.
I tell you names that are falling down the list though: Harry and Meghan.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Just coming up to 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, Will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? Alton School, a private school in Hampshire, has announced that it will shut its doors for the final time this summer, with parents describing the likelihood of a Starmer victory being the final nail in the coffin. Now, Labour have doubled down upon their plans to introduce a 20% tax on fees straight away if they win on the 4th of July. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? Joining me now, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, editor-at-large of The Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, writer, columnist and journalist Emma Wolfe, and head teachers at the LVS Ascot, Christine Cunniff. Christine, I'm going to start with you. First of all, your thoughts on this whole plan, Sir Keir Starmer's plan?
I think it's nothing short of madness, and no one seems to actually agree with Labour. So, for example, The Telegraph yesterday said this policy is bad. To bring it in now is cruel. The Guardian has said a substantial threat to the Treasury's ability to fund improved state outcomes. And it goes on. Today in The Times, there are real-life examples where children will be displaced from school. We're talking hundreds of thousands of children.
It just seems, doesn't really, I mean, even just looking at it as an external observer, I don't have any support for any of the parties at all. I don't get it. Emma Wolfe.
This is cheap, yeah, a cheap, easy target. It's the politics of envy. It's thinking, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll attack private school parents. And in fact, this policy is already backfiring. All it does is mean that middle-income earners end up taking their children out of private school because they simply can't afford it, and they send their children to state schools. When they send their children to the top state schools in an area, you increase the pressure on the really good state schools. Already, state schools are under pressure, massive pressure. Already, private schools, as you said, Alton School, are closing. Already, I've been speaking to parents who literally are at the limit of what they can afford. They really care about private school education. They really care about giving their kids the very best start that they can. And already they're saying, I just can't do it. I cannot afford another $4,000, $5,000, $7,000, whatever it is per year. So this, I think, is really, really... it's actually very disappointing from Labour. And everybody has the choice of how they spend their money. But for some reason, when you have parents like my parents who had no money and they scrimp and they save to get us through private school because they really cared about education, you don't attack people who spend their money on foreign holidays. You don't attack parents who spend their money on new sports cars or beauty treatments or whatever. But when it comes to private school and those parents who really scrimp and save to get their kids through private school, everybody wants to attack them.
Charlotte Griffiths.
Well, I'm a mother of 3, and a huge motivator for me and my husband to go to work was the idea that one day my kids, who are at state school now, might go to private school. And we were saving up, and now that plan's completely dashed because we've got 3 of them, so we've got no hope now. And the idea that these private schools are these amazing palaces with swimming pools. I went to a private school. It was a very normal school. My parents saved really hard. I was an only child, so they were able to afford it. It didn't have a swimming pool. It didn't even have showers. It didn't really have sports pitches. But it was very academic, and it was really good for me, actually, for where I was in my teenage years. It was really important that I went to this school. It changed my whole life. And the idea that those kind of schools, these kind of middle-of-the-road, Middle England kind of private schools, will just basically have to go out of business because people like me, you know, I'm not going to be able to afford to send my children to the school that I went to. And it wasn't even a very flash private school, but it did what it needed to do, and it's a real shame.
Norman Baker.
Well, in an ideal world, of course, which we haven't got, the state system would be so good that nobody wants to use a private school. But we're not there, I'm afraid, and people make choices based on their priorities for their children, and many will decide that private schools are a better option. They're a better option in many state schools, but some state schools, of course, are very good indeed, but they're not always the majority. The question is as to whether it will destroy private education. It won't destroy it, because a great many people who use private schools are actually coming from abroad.
Well, hold on.
The
majority aren't coming from abroad. You can't make the rule for the minority on this. The majority aren't.
I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that the people who will be affected by that will be some of the lower income people in this country who choose to scrimp and save and send their children to private school. But it won't destroy the private school system because it will simply up the fees for those who can afford, which by and large are not people from this country.
Well, exactly. So in a way, it's destroying the sector for the British people. And it's making a wider gap between those who can and those who can't.
Yes,
and it'll only
right.
be the super rich that will be able to afford these things. And you've now made a wider gap between rich and poor. It doesn't really make much sense to me. And also, if these schools continue to close, Christine, he's going to get less money from them.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's the report this week that they've already lost £22 million cost to the taxpayer because of the amount of children that's not coming now. And they're basing their numbers on the Institute of Fiscal Studies report. But the Adam Smith Institute and the Taxpayers Alliance have disproved this. And it shows that it cost in excess of £1.6 billion as well. And then look at the state schools as well. One of my parents, as an example, went to the local authority to put her child's name down on the waiting list. She's number 75. And there are counties such as Oxfordshire, Leeds, you name it, there's a long, long list where they're actually saying that there are limited places, if any at all. Now, the other thing is Labour are not listening. And I think what they should do is go and ask Matt Rodder, who is the Reading East Labour MP, who's done extensive research on this, where 55% of the LEAs say it's really bad to take children out and take them to another school. And it's been proven that they will underachieve up to 18% at GCSE if they're forced to go. And 1 in 5 children in independent education have SEN lessons, which are on top of the already fees that they pay. So the financial circumstances here are drastic, and our children will be the ones who pay.
Well, look, Emma, there could be an argument for this if the state sector was working with all guns blazing and there were school places and everything else like that. But it doesn't sound like that is the case, and any teacher will tell you that. I used to lecture in schools myself. So I'm sort of concerned with regard to this policy that you're actually only going to overburden an already very burdened state school sector.
Exactly. You are shooting yourself in the foot. Already the state sector is under incredible pressure, especially the sort of, the middle to highest performing state sector. We all know the middle class parents who try to get their children into the excellent state schools in their local area. And there are people, it's exactly as Christine says, you're really, really disrupting children's education. And there are so many reasons why Labour think this is going to play well, hit the rich parent. It's a very, very idiotic policy. It's going to cost a lot, and it's going to put huge pressure on the state sector. It's going to put huge pressure on those state schools who are already, under a lot of pressure.
Charlotte, can you see anything good about this policy? There must be something there.
I mean, not really. And I also think it feeds into a sort of existential crisis that this country is going to go through. If the middle classes, who are the backbone of this country, have no motivation to work hard and keep going at their jobs because they can't really afford to get a decent house on the property ladder, or if they do, they can't get one big enough to have their children, then they may as well not have more than one child or any children. Or they may not, if they know they can't send their kids to private school, why bother? The whole thing collapses because the middle classes and the aspirational middle classes are the backbone of this country. If you take all these things away and keep them just out of arm's reach, it's actually an existential crisis for how this society works and functions. And it's just, I think it's Labour yet again forgetting how important the middle classes are and how hard the middle classes work and what they aspire towards.
And final word to you, Norman Baker. You've got about 30 seconds. Can you find anything good about this policy? Is there anything?
I can understand the philosophical argument that says it's a good idea to apply VAT onto charitable status and change that status. However, I don't think it's thought through the consequences. I think the consequences will be adverse. I think it's about throwing red meat as their left-wingers, I'm afraid, and I think it will not be a successful policy if it survives.
If it survives, well, he's doubled down on it. So finally, to all of you then, will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? Yes or no, Charlotte?
Yeah, afraid so.
Norman Baker, yes or no?
No, because of the reasons I gave.
Emma Wolf, yes or no?
Private school will end up just being the preserve of the uber rich.
And Christine, yes or no?
Yes.
Right, thank you so much for your thoughts. Interesting. Thank you so much. That was, of course, Norman Baker. He's a former Home Office Minister. Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large of The Mail on Sunday. Emma Wolf, writer, columnist and journalist. Also, Christine Cunniff, she's a head teacher at the LVS in Ascot. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we will continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come. Outside, my guest, he's a mystery. We're talking highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next. Well, my guest today is an award-winning producer, songwriter and record-breaking apprentice contestant. I'll give you another clue, but first, let's get your latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
Cheers, Nana. 4:32, our top stories. 8 people have been taken to hospital after severe turbulence on a Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including airport police and fire and rescue, met the plane as it landed safely shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. The injuries to 6 passengers and 6 crew occurred as they were flying over Turkey. Now, the Shadow Chancellor says Britain's economy will only stabilise with a change of government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. Of course, the Conservatives say that their plan is working, but the Shadow Chancellor says people are feeling worse off. Compulsory national service for 18-year-olds will come into force if the Conservative Party wins the general election. The Prime Minister says young people will be given a choice between 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their communities. Labour described it as a headline-grabbing gimmick. More than 500 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats this bank holiday weekend. Home Office data shows that 227 people crossed illegally from France yesterday. Of course, it follows another 288 arrivals in 5 boats on Friday. It takes the total so far this year to nearly 10,400. And a private school in Hampshire is closing at the end of the current term due to a drop in demand and what it's been calling adverse political factors. Alton School, which caters for nursery age to 6th form, has been open since 1938. It comes as demand for independent school places continues to fall, with average fees at around £18,000 a year. If you want all the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. 34 minutes after 4 o'clock now. £20,000 has got to be won in our Great British Giveaway. Do not miss out, as Lions are going to close this Friday. Here are all the details that you need to get your chance to win the cash.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, World View. We'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast. But next, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that question. Will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Apparently alcohol abuse is costing England £27 billion a year. I mean, in fairness, that's the price of 2 rounds in London, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. Not that I'm a big consumer of alcohol. I'm very Mediterranean in my consumption. But revealed, alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. So this cost basically encompasses a variety of aspects, from health-related problems, so the cost on the NHS, lack of productivity, people who lose their jobs, social services, and all that. And of course, it has been on the rise, 37% more compared to last time this was studied in 2003. So now Institute of Alcohol Studies and some other groups are pushing or asking for tougher taxes and tougher regulation. But is that the solution? Like in ancient Rome, they said, in medium stat virtus, like moderation, virtue is in moderation. And again, if they're going to raise the price, people like myself or yourself who are moderate consumers, pardon?
You're going to turn to heroin. Because it'll become... I mean, well, this is what's happened in Scotland.
It becomes unaffordable, so...
Yeah, in Scotland, they had minimum unit alcohol pricing, and so it pushes up the cost of getting off your tree for your average Scottish ne'er-do-well who likes to sit on a bus stop and drink a bottle of cider. So instead, they're turning to street drugs, which are cheaper by comparison.
That is just terrible. I like that the alcohol industry have come back on this. A guy called Matt Lambert, who's the chief executive of the Portman Group, and they represent the alcohol industry. And he says that the IAS, that's the group who've created this, have failed to take into account the significant direct economic contribution of the alcohol industry to the wider economic and social benefits of moderate and responsible alcohol consumption. Well, it's so true, isn't it? We've got a declining birth rate. We need people to get drunk and chat each other up.
Yeah. If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch because I've been asking you whether you think that private schools, whether Labour's plans will destroy private schools. Andy says that the kids moving from private schools to state schools will be crucified by their new mates. Kids can be very cruel. Yes, it's very true. Shirley Finneran, she says Labour's plans will totally destroy those who work hard for their children and put private education back into the hands of the very rich. And this one by Ava, I had to read it. It's a long one, but I'll get to it. I only went to a state school, then on to the Royal Navy at 15. When I left the Royal Navy, set up my own business under Maggie Thatcher, small business loan scheme backed by 80% government. Happy to say sold out after a few years and put a few million in the bank and sent my children to private school. After pre-nursery school from 3 years old, son got his degree but ended up a waster. Don't assume a private education will always help. Just look at Andrew and Harry. Not very bright, eh? Very funny. What do you think? Get in touch. What do you think? You literally tell me. Right, joining me now, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax raise destroy private education in Britain? Alton School, a private school in Hampshire, has announced that it will shut its doors for the final time this summer, with parents describing the likelihood of victory for Keir Starmer being the final nail in the coffin. Now, Labour have doubled down on their plan to introduce 20% VAT on fees straight away if they win. So I'm asking, will Labour's planned tax rate destroy private education in Britain? Well, my panel joining me now, author and broadcaster Christian Hamilton, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, you first.
I don't think it's going to destroy it. Destroy is a very strong word.
Well, there's a school that's already destroyed.
Well, it's not destroyed, it's closing down.
Well, it's destroyed, isn't it?
I think that was heading for it anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think if you unpick
it was the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, so you have to ask the question, why has this potential... I mean, Labour may not even get in.
No, but it's the final nail in the coffin.
Yes, but it's a nail in the coffin that isn't actually physical at the moment. It's potentially going to be a nail in the coffin. You have to ask what put in all the other nails in the coffin.
Well, there are lots of private schools that are in that similar situation, but the point of it is...
It's this one we're talking about.
If those schools, so I'm asking the plan in general, but if those schools, even if they have on the brink, like that school, there might be lots of schools on the brink, and if that is the final nail on lots of their coffins, he's not going to make the money he wants.
I would argue, because we're talking about this actual school, that maybe it's being poorly managed, or maybe they haven't been charging enough.
The question, OK, that could be true, but the final nail in the coffin was that, and there are other schools that are following suit. So the question that I'm asking is this plan, and I could say the final nail in many schools' coffins, is this a wise plan?
Is it a wise plan? Is it going to? Let's stick with the question. Is it going to destroy private education?
I asked, but then you insist on answering another one.
So the answer is no. I don't think it's going to destroy every private school. No, I don't. I think it's going to affect a lot of schools because 18 grand, and people will think that 18k for one child is disposable income. It's not disposable income. There are parents who are cutting back on family holidays, who are cutting back on significant purchases, who are running around in 15, 18-year-old battered cars because they're prioritising the income. It's not disposable. So you're punishing hard-working parents. People think that they're all minted, they're all millionaires. They're not. They sacrifice so much. So to get back to your question, it's going to potentially destroy this. It's the final thing that's going to destroy this one school. But I think that there's other things in the background that have got the school to this position.
There are other things in the background, but these are factors that he should consider when he's making choices and plans like this. Christine Hamilton.
Well, you mentioned the word choice. Never mind Keir Starmer, never mind the schools. A lot of parents will now, it's June, they will be having to make arrangements for their children and think about their children's education for the next academic year. What are they going to do if they think there's an almost certainty that there's going to be 20% VAT on private school fees? To think, well, the last thing I want to do is put my child into a school. I mean, I don't know how long it'll take to get this legislation through. I read today that it can just be done with the statutory instrument. So day one it can be done. But parents are going to have to make the decision. This will undoubtedly put a huge number of them. There'll be a big swathe of middle-class parents who just cannot afford that extra 20%. And frankly, I think it's envy. And I think that a lot of Labour thinkers think about Eton, Harrow, all that sort of thing. They don't think about the private schools in the middle that cater for the mass of the middle classes who just want to sacrifice. I think it was Emma who mentioned holidays, beauty treatments, smart cars. They would much prefer to put their money into their children.
Some people might say...
And they're going to be completely penalised.
Some people might say those things you have listed as those for the bizarre to the wealthy anyway.
Is Starmer going to throw the 20% income at state schools to improve them?
No. He's going to get more teachers, even though actually the numbers of those going to school is actually depleting.
I think he's spent it several times over. It's going on the health service, defence, teachers, etc., etc., etc.
And the non-dom status, they're doing that as too. Well, Fiona Wilson said having a go at private schools is a cheap shot from Starmer to stuff aspiration in the same way that Blair wanted to rub their noses in it when they gave the green light for mass immigration. So that's her view on that. Fitz says the 70s were the best times, especially for glam rock music. Thank you. I love that one.
They were the best times anyway.
They were the best times. That's when I was born. I was born in the 70s. The best people were born then. Right, well, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go?
Northamptonshire.
Should we go to Northamptonshire?
Nice part of the world.
Let's have a chat with Miranda Richardson. Not the Miranda Richardson, but the GB News Miranda Richardson. Miranda Richardson. Nice to see you. Hiya. What do you think?
Do you know what? I think that we've got an issue here, which is if parents start pulling their children out of private school to look at state schools, which if there isn't a decent state school in their area or one that's not already oversubscribed because we're building hundreds of houses and not building education around it to cater for those hundreds of houses, the old people that are going to suffer are the children, ultimately. Exactly. You know, like we say, we know parents are sacrificing themselves to get their children to that education. And, you know, when people do talk of Eton and Harrow, that's like saying that Oxford is the only university. Christine's quite right. There are so many other levels of private schools, you know, where people want to educate their children. It's, you know, we're going to look at education and that 20%, like we say, it's not going into the schools. It's going straight back out and into every other sector. It's not exactly going to help them. But ultimately, the knock-on for state schools is going to be worse. Yeah. And they're not going to get the extra money, you know, from them. They're not going to see that. There won't be the teachers. They'll be under more stress. The kids will be under more stress. You know, parents might now actually have to travel even further than they might necessarily do to try and find their child. It's just a catalogue of errors. You know, at the end of the day, you know, my industry has been knackered by VAT, so what we'll do next is we'll knacker education with VAT as well. You know, we've got to think these children are the future. And we're not going to give them one. We're not going to give them one.
Well, some of them will be devastated moving schools, which isn't fun for anybody. It's awful psychologically and it's quite damaging. Yeah. And let's not forget about the industries around these schools as well that survive because they're there. Miranda, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. That's Miranda Richardson in Northamptonshire. She's our great British voice. Well,
I had to move school. I was kicked out of a private school and then I went to a grammar school.
This is not your bit, Christine.
Well, I just thought I'd speak from personal experience, that's all.
Yes, well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up in the next hour, my Great British Debate. I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service next? Worldview. Paul Duddridge will be here to give us the latest from the Americans. The Americans.
Nana will...
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly, temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of the week, unfortunately we're still going to see low pressure remaining in charge. But there are hints as we head towards Thursday, this area of high pressure will begin to topple in. And that may well set us up for a little bit more in the way of brightness, especially across the west. But in the meantime, Tuesday, Wednesday certainly remaining fairly showery, temperatures around average for the time of year.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. It's just coming up to 51 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for Worldview. Let's head over to America and get the latest from the host of the Politics People podcast on what's happening there. Well, big news. Nigel Farage is not standing for reform. He's concentrating on helping Trump in the US election. Paul?
Look, Nigel Farage has always got his finger on the pulse. I mean, he has defined, I think, the movements of Western politics over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think he's right to concentrate on America over the UK. Whatever happens, we feel like it might be a foregone conclusion. And the impact of any new or current government continuing is not going to have an impact on the world stage. The election, and this is awful because I'm British in America, but the election to really affect change in the West, the one with the potential to actually affect all our lives, is the US election. And I think he's very wise to concentrate all his efforts, all his focus on working with and for Trump to try and affect that victory in the United States in November. I think it's a very sensible move. I mean, he says himself that he's going to still be involved in the next 6 weeks for you guys. But I do think his efforts and attention are correctly focused on the United States, because if Trump can get in, if he can, then I do think any sensible people can breathe a sigh of relief. So I think we all have to be hands to the pump if we really want to affect a massive change in the West.
Also, if Sir Keir Starmer does win the election, there's no, even Trump was talking about some sort of special envoy type role that he'd want Nigel Farage to have, but Trump would have no control over that because it'd be up to Keir Starmer. But if Trump gives Nigel some sort of negotiating in-betweeny role, then Nigel will be in charge of that, which is interesting. That'll be an interesting time.
100%. I mean, look, that's the hope that he becomes. I mean, he could be ambassador still, couldn't he? I mean, he could technically become he could be made US citizen and then be sent over as ambassador to the UK. Theoretically, but that would just be hilarious, and that's worth the price of admission alone. But yes, but I do think, if you want to know what's going to happen in politics in the next 5 years, always just look at what Nigel Farage is doing, and I just think it's very, very telling that he's putting his efforts into the US, and I feel the same way. I'm not sure that Trump can win. This is the thing.
Really? You don't think Trump can win? Why?
It's really difficult.
Why?
It's the abortion thing. You only have... Trump is leading in all the polls, okay? And this is what I want to try and get through to people in the UK, is that he's winning in all the polls. That's fantastic. But it's all going to come down to 6 states. In one of those states, still, Biden is leading, Wisconsin. He pretty much leads the polls there. If you believe that Biden won fairly, I don't, but if you believe he did, he only won by 43,000 votes. Trump only won by 70,000 votes. It all comes down to a few counties in a few states that actually decide what happens to 330 million people. In the midterm elections, after Roe v. Wade was decided by the Supreme Court, when they repealed Roe v. Wade, you had MAGA, Trump-supporting women voting Democrat. And this is going to be the issue that decides the US election. And all the Democrats have to do is concentrate all their firepower of publicity onto the abortion issue in 6 states and probably a few counties. And they will be able to tip the balance to be able to actually win.
Wow,
that's the problem.
That's shocking,
Trump wasn't against Roe v. Wade in 2020. He did win in 2020, but he wasn't against Roe v. Wade. The midterm elections are the indicator that are much more relevant, I think. I hope I'm wrong. I'm praying that I'm wrong.
Time, so I have to go. Paul Dudridge hosts the Politics People podcast. Stay tuned. Next, my outside guest, an award-winning producer, songwriter, and record-breaking apprentice contestant. I'll get my words out. All of that on the way.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. Temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of the week, unfortunately, we're still going to see low pressure remaining in charge. But there are hints as we head towards Thursday, this area of high pressure will begin to topple in. And that may well set us up for a little bit more in the way of brightness, especially across the west. But in the meantime, Tuesday, Wednesday certainly remaining fairly showery, temperatures around average for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, though, my panel and I will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. On the way, my outside guest, I'll give you a clue. He's a popular contestant on the BBC TV series The Apprentice and secured a record-breaking $38.7 million in Formula One E-Task. Then, the Great British Debate. I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 5 o'clock. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Our top stories. 8 people have been taken to hospital after severe turbulence on a Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including airport police and their fire and rescue teams, met the plane as it landed safely shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. Now, the injuries to 6 passengers and 6 crew occurred as they were flying over Turkey. The Shadow Chancellor says Britain's economy will only stabilise with a change of government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. There she is. The Conservatives say their current plan is working, but the Shadow Chancellor says people feel worse off.
We have economic growth on its knees. We have the decline in living standards, the first time on record when living standards will be lower at the end of the Parliament than they were at the beginning. Debt at almost 100% of GDP and taxes at a 70-year high. So after 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors, 12 plans for growth, we know that it is time for change.
18-year-olds face compulsory national service if the Tories win the general election. The Prime Minister says young people will be given a choice of 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their communities. Rishi Sunak says he hopes the scheme will help to unite society in an increasingly uncertain world. Speaking earlier to GB News, Home Secretary James Cleverly said no one will be forced into the military.
The military bit of this will be limited to about 30,000 people. That bit will be voluntary. So the scheme overall will be compulsory, but the military bit will only be for people who volunteer to do that element of it.
Well, more people trust Sir Keir Starmer on matters of national security than the Prime Minister. That's according to a new poll for The Telegraph. The survey also found that a majority of people are not confident that Britain can defend itself against threats from Russia and China. Meanwhile, almost half believe the next few years will be some of the most dangerous that the country has ever faced. Of course, it comes after Rishi Sunak promised to increase Britain's defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. More than 500 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats so far this bank holiday weekend. Home Office data shows that 227 people crossed illegally from France yesterday. Follows another 288 arrivals in 5 boats on Friday. Takes the total so far this year to nearly 10,400. A private school in Hampshire is closing at the end of the current term due to a drop in demand, they say, and adverse political factors. Alton School, which caters for nursery age up to sixth form, has been open since 1938. It comes as demand for independent schools places continues to fall, with average fees at around £18,000 a year. Well, fans were left disappointed last night when the pop star that they'd paid to see at the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester was arrested. Video posted to Nicki Minaj's social media shows her being detained in the Netherlands after allegedly trying to take soft drugs through Schiphol Airport. The 41-year-old Starships singer was later released after spending what she said was 5 to 6 hours in a police cell. She told fans outside her hotel that the show will be rescheduled. The newly unveiled tallest roller coaster in Britain has come to an abrupt stop just a day after it opened. The Hyperia at Thorpe Park in Surrey, said to be the fastest in Britain, and it features Europe's tallest loop. But in a message posted online, the park said that due to unforeseen circumstances, the new coaster will be closed until Wednesday. The rest of the park remains open. And Richard Sherman, whose music inspired generations of children to keep their chin up, has died at the age of 95.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag.
Along with his brother Robert, he created some of Disney's best-known classics. The duo also won 2 Oscars for their work on the musical Mary Poppins. Other credits include The Jungle Book, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Charlotte's Web. Keep up to date with all the latest stories by signing up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Right, coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Now, every Sunday after 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. Today, my guest is an award-winning producer, songwriter and record-breaking apprentice contestant. You see, I think this is a giveaway, this one. Can you guess who he is? We'll find out very shortly. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? Now, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is taking a break from the campaign trail today. His party have launched a major election policy. It will see 18-year-olds taking part in either 12 months of military service or volunteering within the community. But Home Secretary James Cleverly says it's not mandatory. Well, I think what he meant was the fighting part of it isn't. You could have to do the service. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? As ever, the usual thing. Send your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, I thought I'd slot the mini-debate in now, because we need more of Christine and Danny. So I thought I'd do this story on Wes Streeting. Now, Wes Streeting's commented in the Times that cultural rot means that the NHS puts itself before the public. Now, he's also said that he won't give striking doctors their demands of 35% pay rises, and he said he wants to work with doctors in a respectful way, but will need to negotiate some pay rises. So, speaking at the Hayes Festival, he discussed his plans for the NHS if Labour wins, where he'll inherit record waiting lists and ongoing pay disputes. So is he on the right track? Is it time to stop treating the NHS like a religion? So joining me to discuss, my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Christine Hamilton.
Well, Wes Streeting is awfully good at sound bites, and I've heard him say things over the years, and I thought, yes, yes, yes. Oh, crumbs, that was Wes Streeting. But some months ago, maybe over a year ago, he said the NHS is a service, not a shrine. And so, to me, he's on the right track. I just would like to slip in one little personal story, if I may.
Is this about the schools?
No, nothing to do with schools. No, I was firmly told not to mention schools. This is about the NHS. We're talking about... my husband fell the other day, and we had to go off to A&E, and he's broken a rib. And I cannot praise strongly enough the service we got at our big Great Western Hospital. I mean, it took quite a long time to go through the whole process, but by the time, they were very, very good indeed. But the whole NHS en masse is an absolute basket case, and it needs somebody to take control of it. It really does.
Well,
whether Wes Streeting is the man, but he's obviously going to be the man.
But may I just say that you are Christine Hamilton? And
no.
And if you'd gone in there, I think that you would have got slightly, even though you probably don't notice it, you probably would have had slightly preferential treatment, even just that slight little bit of extra.
I don't think so.
They'd have switched the air conditioning on.
There could be, I'm Mum, don't forget, it could be actually quite the reverse. I could go, well, we'll make them wait.
I don't think it is this deity that we're told it is.
No,
I don't class it as a deity, and we don't worship at the shrine of the NHS, yet we're told it constantly by a conveyor belt of politicians.
Well, no, but the point they're making is that you literally couldn't say anything bad about it, and I know, because when I started writing monologues and calling it the no-help service, I got a lot of flack, but now a lot of people are agreeing with me.
Yeah, well, and they should agree with you. That most people, I would argue, do agree with you. It's great if you need it, but we also need to understand that it can be laboriously difficult to actually try and get a doctor in an A&E. The triage system. But we also need to remember, the Americans are quick to criticise the NHS because of the documentaries about long waiting lists. But we also do have the option to go private ourselves. If you want to accelerate, if you want to expedite things, you do have the option to go private. Now, Christine, I'm delighted that Neil, after his slip, he was seen relatively quickly.
Well, A&E, you haven't a choice. You go straight to the NHS.
Yeah, and even if you do have private healthcare, you still have to go to A&E. That's the catalyst for everything. So it's great to see also that he's not going to buckle to the demands of 35% pay hike. So it's going to be really
silly, though.
It's crazy, but it's going to be really interesting, because what motivates these hard left unions is the fact that it's a Conservative government. That really triggers them. So now, if we do have a left-wing Labour government, it's going to be so interesting. And I tell you what, a lot of hip hypocrisy is going to be exposed when people capitulate and their demands weaken.
Well, it'll be interesting to see as well, but I think one of the things that West Streeting was also referring to is the sort of culture of cover-up. So rather than, you know, oh, we don't want to look bad, we can't have our figures look bad, or they're more concerned at the NHS now with that kind of thing. So that's what he's referring to, but listen, we'll talk more about that. If you just joined in, it's just coming up to 11 minutes after 5 o'clock. And coming up, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? This is GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
The Eurovision, according to figures out this morning, had its most disastrous night to date because viewing figures were down by 2.5 million.
So the BBC had a drag queen on telling everyone that she was boycotting it.
Who was boycotting it?
Someone called Crystal, who came on the Newsnight to say
she?
that she was boycotting her North London party because of Israel. So maybe that's why the figures are down.
They cancelled some Eurovision parties in gay bars in Soho.
Exactly. So I wonder whether that's what did it.
North London party.
I think the whole of Dalston basically not tuning in is what's caused this massive drop in ratings because of the whole controversy around Israel. I have to say, a lot of those performers needed to go and see a hygienist. I mean, that man who was the Irish entry, who's supposed to be a satanic witch. She's she does pop witchery or something.
She screeched.
And she screeched a lot, and then took her clothes off. Yeah. And then there was a sort of devil man who was gyrating around her, who obviously hadn't cleaned his teeth in years.
That was the vodka break.
Okay, fine.
That was the vodka break. When I went and got.
And I thought the Israeli entry. I mean, I didn't really like the song. I liked her dress.
Well, I just voted for it because
I thought the choreography was awful.
I hated the way she was besieged in a hotel room.
But I did also think that the Ukraine entry was quite interesting because I know that the Israeli entry got into trouble for referencing the October 7th attacks, and she had to sort of rewrite her stuff because you're not allowed to mention the war or anything like that, which is fine. But then the Ukraine entry was very war. I mean, they had kind of gunfire coming in over her.
The whole thing, there was double standards.
There was quite a lot of that,
I mean, the people outside, the queers of Palestine.
Are we going to carry on paying for it, though? Because, I mean, the BBC pays the lion's share of it. That's us.
Yeah.
And we do spectacularly badly every year.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on. Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. You're here now. So it's coming up to 14 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is a GB News. We are the People's Channel. Now, every Sunday, just after 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And this week, my guest is a record-breaking Apprentice star and an award-winning producer-songwriter. In his illustrious career, he's worked with the likes of Usher. I love that song, Pop Your Collar. You know you're doing good when they're jealous. They hate you because you're a go-getter. Pop your collar, don't let it sweat you. Justin Timberlake, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. Did you get who he is? Yes, I'm joined by Apprentice star Trey Lowe. Trey Lowe. Hello,
what
Trey.
an introduction.
How are you, Trey?
Love it. I am brilliant. I'm incredibly busy, but incredibly grateful for all the opportunities that have been coming my way. It's been absolutely nuts since the show's finished.
So talk to me about why you got into The Apprentice. Which one were you in? Because there's been so many now. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Which one? So it was just the last one finished, which was season 18.
Season 18.
2 more before the big 20. That's going to be exciting. But I got into it for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was definitely my brother passing. You know, obviously, I was in the band Architects, and Asher was the other half of the band, passed away. And if he hadn't passed, I would have still been this musician who would never go on TV, because they're like cool musician in the background. Nobody knows you kind of vibe.
Wasn't your lead singer Nana?
Yeah, your namesake, exactly, yeah,
Nana. I thought that she was me and I was her.
Really?
And her name changed to Nana.
Nana, yeah. I'm trying to think of when that actually happened.
That was
I'm not
a long
sure.
time ago.
But yeah, good thing she changed it, because there's lots of Nanas out there, aren't there?
I'm Nana, I'm still Nana.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Nana Akua.
No, quite a few of the same surname as well.
Yeah, but they're not on TV.
No, and they're not as good as you.
No. We'll get to that. But anyway, so go on. So you were in the
it was just, I was in the Architects with my brother and Nene, and I think when my brother passed, I looked at life different. So sometimes life will throw opportunities that normally if you go by your old default self, you're like, nah, not for me. Like, even though The Apprentice, I'm a massive fan, it still felt a bit reality TV-esque. So before my brother passed, I would have been like, no. But after he passed, I just remember thinking, there are things that you want to talk about, like, you know, issues around men and men's health, etc., which is how my brother passed away. And just all these issues that I speak about now as a mentor, rather than a cool musician where you're too cool for school, I speak much more about matters of the heart. So I thought, if I can go on a show and talk about my wellness product, about what I do and how I want to impact people's lives, why would I not go on one of the, in my opinion, one of the best shows on TV, the most credible show, I think, on TV, and it's led by one of my biggest business idols ever, which is Lord Sugar. Like, come on. Like, when I tick all those boxes, I'm like... And it was just... I think it was my wife that pushed me, and part of me just thought, you know what, why not?
Well, your brother probably would have said, go for it.
He would have been, yeah.
How did he die?
So my brother, as far as we know, died from COVID, although it wasn't on a post-mortem. He passed in... any time between Jan and February the 2nd. I say any time because we found him. We don't know exactly when it was. But he, in my opinion, he died a bit from neglect, which is why I wanted to shine the light on men's issues. Like, single men are very vulnerable when they're unwell. I'm sure you know a few, like, men are stubborn when it comes to looking after themselves. He couldn't walk from, say, this table to that, like, literally without not being able to breathe. And instead of him going to A&E, he went to his doctors and they gave him antibiotics. I mean, that kind of thought process.
But was he overweight? Was he...
No, he just...
was a fit young man.
He was asthmatic. You know, COVID was killing a lot of black men at the end of the day.
How old was he?
He was 49, his age I am now. But he was asthmatic, not necessarily the healthiest. He's not like me, he goes gym all the time. So he had a lot of reasons why he was a little bit vulnerable for something like COVID. And we lost a lot of, you know, black men that year, a lot of musicians as well, which was crazy. So it was his death that made me change the way I look at the world. Now I'm like, any opportunity to make a difference and shine a light on something, I'm going to do it. So it was a no-brainer, and I'm so glad because, you know, to a certain extent, it felt like I had something more at stake. People knew me for Body Groove. I was this cool musician. It wasn't like I was anonymous. And I thought, it could have been a disaster. I could have gone on there, looked silly, gone out in the first week and the rest of it. But I'm like, you know what? If you're not going to live life fearlessly, there's no point living at all. So I was like,
so talk to me about your product on The Apprentice and your experience being there.
Oh, my product in interviews. You watch interviews.
Some of them I did, but
that was a mauling.
I was so addicted to all of them. I used to watch every single one.
Yeah. A lot of people are like that, and I think what I loved about this year, it was a vintage year, because a lot of people used to watch the show, and some of them haven't for the last couple of years. But in my opinion, this year that we've just been on, I think it's been one of the best ever.
You would say that.
No, but even if I was watching, like, the calibre of people on this show, everyone agrees it was just high, and they really set out to have the highest.
They probably...
So my product for the final 5 was a functional shot, because that's the sort of stuff I take, like, I don't know if you're allowed to say brand names, you're probably not here.
You can say
like Moju, things like that. Functional ginger shots. Like, I'm really into natural health rather than pharmaceuticals. So I wanted to create something similar to that, but something that was... would boost testosterone levels in men, because testosterone levels in men is falling off the cliff, and it's a serious issue. It's not just your libido and all that kind of stuff. It's things like mood and all the rest of it. So I wanted it to be a functional shot for men in terms of their health, but also an educational thing. So at the back of it would be a QR code that would take you to a platform that teaches men things like, have you checked your prostate? Have you done this? Have you done that? And as that goes on, then branch out to women and all over the place. It would have been a real wellness brand. But of course, because I went on the show pretty much last minute, and I was getting married that year. I mean, who does that? I had almost no time to really develop a business plan. It was well thought through, don't get me wrong. I had these partners called the Drinks Lab in Scotland to help me make it. But of course, I didn't have time to go up to Scotland. Dude, I had no time
sort of slightly
getting married. I literally probably had about 24 hours, 48 hours to submit the plan because I auditioned for the very last day, pretty much. You know.
And you got through to the interviews as far as...
Yeah, it's interview stage, yeah.
And what was it like? Because the guy with the bald head, was he there? He's good, isn't he?
Claude is the one that nobody wants to see. And he's the most numbers-orientated of all the interviewers. I was thinking, I've got a business plan I haven't thoroughly done fully.
Oh, God, yeah.
He's going to give me a mauling, and he did not disappoint. He gave me a mauling. I'm almost glad at the way it was edited because his mauling was a lot worse than when you watch it.
Yeah.
Because when you watch it in context of all the 4 interviewers, they actually loved me as a person. They just didn't think anything of the plan. So sometimes it's good, even though your business plan might be, you know, rubbish, I think as you as a credible person, if they see it's credible, I think that's what's the most important thing, and that's what's happened. People buy from people, yeah.
So you're a mentor, you speak about personal adversity, that kind of thing, and health. Where are you now with everything then? Because it must have propelled your trajectory, you know.
It has.
And as we were saying, you fly there in the air or you sing.
And you know, that's the best analogy because people just think you go on TV and it's easy, but I always say it's like something launching you into the air and then you're flapping your wings for dear life. And I've been in entertainment for 24 years. I do not take that for granted.
No.
Where some people might go on Love Island and think, right, I'm sorted now, easy. But it isn't. It just really gives you a bigger audience to do what you're already doing anyway. And if you're competent, confident in what you do, there's a chance that you can actually flap your wings and get somewhere. So I'm at the stage now where I'm developing a wellness product. It's pivoted a little bit from a wellness shot to a wellness powder, but I'm in the R&D development stages of that because obviously it takes time. You got to get the taste right, let alone all the ingredients. I'm not someone just to white label something and there you go, I've been on The Apprentice, buy it. No.
Well,
I really want something that is...
that way to build your coffers. And
that is one way to do it.
That.
For me, integrity is everything. I just couldn't do that.
Well, no, but it'd be your brand, your product.
But my heart wouldn't be on something that's been white labelled. My heart in something where, OK, it's got ashwagandha in it, it's got lion's mane, it's, you know, things that I've truly thought about, you know, because...
Lion's mane sounds like something for a man. It's for...
It's an incredible mushroom. But you know why as well? Because I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 5 years ago.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
It's a tough one. And I remember the doctor saying to me, I had an inflamed ileum, which is part of your small bowel. And they said to me, right, we're going to have to operate you, blah, blah, blah. I said, you're not going to touch me at all. I'm going to go away and I'm going to reverse it. And they were looking at me thinking, no way. But all fans of Body Groove, which was very lucky because they kind of went with it. They were scanning me with, and I really got the VIP treatment for them, which is good because it allowed me to measure exactly what I was doing was making an impact. I literally went and saw this natural herbalist. I don't want to give the details because it's daytime, but I mean, I had to do a lot of stuff to restart my gut flora, basically. So you can read between the lines, right? You've got some of the strongest laxatives ever.
Okay.
And I then became vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, and I went back to them 6 months later, and it was reversed. And that's why I believe in the power of nutrition.
That doesn't work for everybody.
Not for everyone, no.
So this cake I was eating earlier, this one, Lola's, she was in earlier. It's delicious. So that's no good for you. You're a vegan.
That's like diabetes, like.
You're a vegan?
No, I'm not a vegan, no.
It's not.
But I recognise if you're going to kickstart your gut flora, you do have to almost start again, and you've got to go back to plants.
Well, obviously, if anyone does suffer with Crohn's, obviously go to your GP, get them.
Oh yeah. No. This is not medical advice. This worked for me.
It worked for you. Yeah. Well, listen, Trey, we're running out of time.
Oh, such a shame.
Sadly, because I could talk to you.
I could talk to you forever. I know.
Bring you back. But that is Trey Lowe. He's got his new product coming out soon.
Yep.
Well, when it does come out, then you come back to me.
I am 100% coming back. You're going to be the first person to taste it.
Thank you, Trey.
Interviews all over again.
That is the brilliant Trey Lowe. He's a mentor, and also he was on The Apprentice. Good job, thank you. Right, that was my outside guest. Now it's time for the Great British Debate This Out, and I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? I can't even talk now. It's the thought of that cake. Now, with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak taking a break from the campaign trail today, his party have launched a major election policy, and it will see 18-year-olds taking part in either 12 months of military service or volunteering within the community. But Home Secretary James cleverly says that it's not mandatory, and by that I think he means that the service itself is, but the military element isn't. So for the Great British Debate This Hour, I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? Well, joining me now is author and broadcaster Julie Cook, also combat veteran Trevor Coult, and also journalist Emma Wolfe. Right, well, I'm going to start with you. You're a combat veteran. Trevor, is it time? Do we need to bring it back? Let's get these young people, let's get them to learn street fighting.
Well, I listened to the Prime... First of all, thanks for having me on, Nana. I do appreciate it. I listened to what the Prime Minister had to say, and, you know, it's not a bad idea, if I'm honest, but that 12 months would not be possible. I mean, it's 6 months training, and if you get injured, it's 8 months. So 12 months, it sounds nice for an election, but and it would install selfless commitment in the Army's values and standards to young adults. But 12 months is not feasible. I think it'd be a waste of taxpayers' money.
Well, what do you think? Emma Wolf, what are your thoughts on it? Because, you know, I think 12 months is decent. You don't have to be in the military service. We're talking about some form of serving your country.
I think it's the first excellent idea that Sunak has had in a very, very long time. I think it's brilliant. We've got a real crisis amongst young people at the moment. There's an epidemic of depression, anxiety disorders, obesity. They're all stuck indoors on their phones. I think 12 months of serving your country, getting some physical, you know, getting a career path, getting some physical activity into you, getting some rigor, getting some boundaries, getting some discipline, having some interaction with other people, get them off their phones. I think this is excellent. It's effectively like, it's the equivalent of like a gap year after school. It gives them a shared sense of initiative, of purpose. It gives them a reason to be proud of their country. It may even, lots of people will just go on to university, they'll go into jobs after this. But for some people, it'll be a really interesting career path. I think it's a great idea. Nana, as you know, I've got a 3-year-old boy. I would be very happy, genuinely, I'd be very happy for him to do a year's military training when he turns 18. Not now, maybe 3 is a bit young, but at 18.
He wouldn't be much help at 3, would he? He'd be like, OK, and then he'd be like, Mummy. So
he would actually, but anyway.
Julie Cook, what do you think about the idea? Julie.
Hi, Nana. Well, I think this is the final nail in the coffin for the Conservatives. I really think he has really destroyed his campaign with this announcement. I'm a mum of a 10-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy. So my son, if this comes into play, would be doing this in a couple of years' time. I'm all for citizenship. I'm all for civic duty. I'm all for volunteering. A lot of who isn't. That's wonderful stuff for kids. But this has been announced the same week. We've had an announcement of stocking up and prepping in our cupboards should war come. There was a huge rhetoric of war in the newspapers, in the media, and inferences from government. I think you'd have to be mad and crackers, any parent, to vote for this the way the world is at the moment.
What do you mean? I would actually say you'd be mad and crackers to not have something like this in place with the way the world is at the moment. That's the way I see it. I mean, the world is a frightening place. Surely, Trevor, getting people involved in some form of... It doesn't have to be military, but don't you think a lot of young people would actually really enjoy it?
Well, for instance, you're showing pictures of soldiers in combat while we are discussing this. I'm all for getting, as Lily said, getting teenagers off the street and installing discipline and making them go forward in life with respect for others, integrity. But my point is, 12 months, it costs £50,000 to train one soldier. You're talking 50,000 of those in the UK. Yeah. There's 306. So you're talking 35 billion a year if you want to put these people through this. We can't afford it. I think it's just a political soundbite, but we haven't got the infrastructure for that amount of people. But it is something that I think should be looked at.
But we haven't got the infrastructure for electric cars. Even though I don't agree with them, that's no reason to not do them, and they're still doing it. So at some pace, you have to start somewhere. So I mean, there's a lot of knife crime, there's a lot of young people literally not knowing what to do or anything. Surely some form of guidance. I mean, I did Duke of Edinburgh. If it was spread out longer, they're talking about the reason why we're showing military, by the way, because we don't have much more detail on the policy. But we know that military will be one of the aspects of it. So that's why, Trevor, surely that level, getting people focused on this country and serving this country is a good start.
Well, it would certainly help. Going back from my time in the military, in the army or in the military, there's no religion, there's no barriers, there's no colours or creeds. Everyone works together. The teamwork in there should install something better for civilian life. It brings you out with a different outlook, and it's something that needs looked at. I think it's a great idea, but it needs tweaked. It needs tweaked massively for it to go forward as a proper plan.
Yeah, well, look, Emma, I'm with him on that one. Sounds like a good idea. Although it's interesting that Julie seems to think that that's the nail in his coffin. Emma, do you think it's the nail in Sunak's coffin, this particular plan?
A lot of young people are not going to be happy about this. A lot of parents are not going to be happy about it. I get that, and I agree with Trevor. In a practical sense, there's not much detail on how it would work. Plenty of middle-class parents would be trying to get their kids off. like everybody gets off jury service. It's meant to be mandatory. So I think it's probably a bit of a gimmick policy, but I like it in principle. I like the idea. Yes, we'd have to invest. It would cost a lot. But you know what? It'd be cheaper than children, young people on benefits, sitting on benefits, going into a life of crime, the anxiety, the depression, all the stuff that comes from having nothing, literally nothing to do with their lives. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I don't think there's too much snobbishness about military service. Why? It's a great career path for a lot of young girls and boys. It would be a great, young people, but male and female. I think it's great. I think it's a really, really nice idea.
She said that there's a lot of snobbishness for people in thinking about military service. Would you agree with her?
No, I don't. I don't think snobbishness comes into it at all. In fact, I love the military. I wear my poppy with pride. I've written a book about the military. I have the highest respect for them, and anyone who chooses to enter the military, I think is incredible and incredibly brave. No, my argument is that they're calling this mandatory at a backdrop of war. We are hearing all the time about Iran, about China, about Russia, about Ukraine. I think we can't separate national service with a military element to it from what's going on the global stage. And if you want your kids to be cannon fodder in 5-6 years, fine. I don't.
Well, you say that, but then if we are attacked and we don't have anything, then we're all cannon fodder. So somebody's got to fight for this country. And to be honest, the reason why we're all sitting here is because the soldiers who risk their lives to give us the opportunity to be here and have our freedoms. So I think that we should absolutely educate our kids to have some sort of compassion and loyalty to this country. But thank you so much for your thoughts, Julie Cook, Dave, Trevor Coult, and also Emma Wolfe. Right, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We'll continue with this great British debate. I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, but first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 5:32. 8 people have been taken to hospital after severe turbulence on a Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin. Dublin Airport said emergency services, including airport police and fire and rescue teams, met the plane as it landed safely shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. The injuries occurred to 6 passengers and 6 members of the crew. They occurred as they were flying over Turkey. Well, the Shadow Chancellor says there'll be no increases to tax or national insurance under a Labour government. Rachel Reeves is promising a tough set of spending rules that she says will grow the economy while keeping taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. The Tory party say their current plan is working, but Labour is arguing that people are feeling worse off. Well, the Home Secretary says that no one would be sent to jail for refusing national service. James Cleverly's comments follow plans by the Tories to introduce mandatory service for 18-year-olds if the party wins the election. Young people would be given a choice between 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their community. Labour's described it as a headline-grabbing gimmick. More than 500 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats this bank holiday weekend. Home Office data showing that 227 crossed illegally from France yesterday. That follows another 288 arrivals in 5 boats on Friday. It brings the total number so far this year to nearly 10,400. And a private school in Hampshire is closing at the end of the current term due to a drop in demand and what it's been calling adverse political factors. Alton School, which caters for nursery ages up to 6th form, has been open since 1938. Comes as demand for independent school places continues to fall, with average fees at around £18,000 a year. If you want the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or by going to gbnews.com/alerts. Back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Now, £20,000 has got to be won in our Great British giveaway. Do not miss out, as lines are going to close this Friday. Here are the details on what you need to do for your chance to win the cash.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Next, though, it's time for the Great British Debate This Out. And I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change. You've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is coming up to 40 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget, you can also stream the show live on YouTube. I'm Nana Akua. It's time, though, for the Great British Debate This Hour, and I'm asking, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is taking a break from the campaign trail. His party have launched a major election policy. 18-year-olds will be taking part in either 12 months of military service or volunteering within the community. But Home Secretary James Cleverly says it is not mandatory. So I'm not sure what the difference between compulsory and mandatory is, but I think that it's meant to be compulsory. So, yeah, that's interesting. Right, so joining me now to discuss my panel, Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, I forgot who you were.
How could you possibly
forget
are these people?
Danny?
Who's
I meant you as well.
Who's that?
big bald man.
Shall we go and leave her to do it on her own?
In the corner of my eye. Who is this thug? No, I don't think we should. No, I don't think. I don't think we're at the precipice of a world war. I don't think we are. I think if we were seriously in danger of becoming embroiled in this, then I think it would be mandatory, and it would be conscription. So that's the legal compulsion, conscription. So that's where, like my dad, for example, he was conscripted. He went over to Suez in 19. I don't know why I'm asking you for such a historical timeline.
Yes,
but
I know why you're asking.
1954. Okay, and he's 19. He's watching the telly right now. Hello, Dad.
Oh,
yeah, he loves your
wow.
show. My mum and Dad love your show.
Oh.
And so that was at a time post-war where the military was part of the UK life, the Great British life.
But why would you wait to set up your army at the precipice of war? Surely you do it before. Christine?
Well, there are two prongs to this, aren't there? One is to make sure you have a decent fighting armed service. And a lot of the senior armed service people, they don't want all these spotty conscripts, do they? But our armed services are so badly depleted. But the other prong is that it would do some of these young people a hell of a lot of good to have a bit of service discipline, a little bit of esprit de corps, it really would. They don't have to go into the Army, Navy or the Air Force. They can volunteer for 1 month a week in their community. So that's the voluntary bit.
That bit I like, the sort of social bit, rather than picking up a gun sort of thing.
Choice. You'd have a choice. You could either or.
Yes, but that bit is voluntary. But if you don't do that, you then have to do the military.
Yeah, so you've got a choice.
But what I wonder about in political terms is any 18-year-old who's just about to vote on July the 4th is going to think, I don't want to do that, no.
Oh, I hadn't
well,
thought
some of them might want to do it, though. Some of them might. I would love to. Nambo.
Yeah, but those who want...
You can see me now.
want to do it...
Like a little belt pack there with the machine gun. Like Nambo. I click my heels and then...
Nana, you're not allowed to wear stilettos in the serious forces. Did you know that?
Oh, I would have that. I'd be wearing nice shoes. I'd look good out of all the things.
I'm not sure it's a very good political decision, but people who want to volunteer, people who want to go into the services, they can do it.
We've already got that at the moment.
People at schools, and a lot of private schools offer CCF, Combined Cadet Force.
Yeah, but this is all very well, Christine. But then if there's war and people need to fight...
If there's war, then there'd be conscription.
Yeah, but why would you do it then when nobody knows what they're doing? It'll be like a Potemkin army that you're sending out with people who don't know what they're doing. Why not give people some sort of loyalty to this country? I mean, we've had lots of messages in.
So what are you saying? We should have conscription?
Absolutely. Well, not conscription. I'm talking about national service.
No, I think it's a good idea.
There's a war that you would conscript, but look, national service, because people can either do military or they can do something that gives them a sense of community and a sense of citizenship of this country.
Well, contributing to your nation.
If you look at Ukraine were invaded and then they had the conscription.
Yeah, but they have a very good army. They're not like us. We've got like 70,000 people. Yeah. This will be a place for some young people who might consider being in the army.
My point is that when Russia invaded, then you were conscripted. You didn't need to have national service.
Yes, they did.
My point is that if we were at the point of being invaded, then you would have the conscription.
Yes, but we're not.
And even middle-aged fat guys like me would have to... Dad's army would have to go in the front line.
You might be a shield, but
I could be one of those barrage balloons that used to stop the Luftwaffe.
I just think it would do so many young people a hell of a lot of good.
It could do them a hell of a lot of harm, though, some young people.
But then they don't.
They maybe have a sensitive disposition.
Well, then do voluntary service.
Okay, well, they may not want to do voluntary service. Then they've got to do the... Look, a Sergeant Major Akua.
School. You
don't
want to go to work.
You're like a drill... No, she's like a drill sergeant.
I'm telling the truth. If you don't want to do stuff, that's tough. This is a tough world.
Too many youngsters lay around and they now get the idea that you can have something for nothing and they don't need to get
That's
a job.
A small minority.
Because the dad doesn't have a job and the money just comes in. This would wake them up.
Or they want to be on reality TV, X Factor.
Exactly.
I'm going to be unboxing.
She's like a drill sergeant.
Great. What are you going to be unboxing? Honestly, do you know some of the things that my daughter? She's obviously a little bit like me, so she doesn't think that she's going to get something for nothing. And she asks me for something, and it's just ridiculous. I just go, throw my head back. Obviously, she realises she's not going to get that. I make her work for things, so if she wants to do a bit of babysitting or something like that, she knows and she has a sense of loyalty and citizenship, and I tell her to be proud of this country. And if there was conscription, or maybe not conscription because there's no war, but national service, I think that she would enjoy doing it.
And don't underestimate
She's 15 now.
the spirit of men and women of this country in their 40s and 50s. If we were invaded, you'd be amazed at how many people would pick up a rifle and defend this place.
Maybe, but you don't...
Many wouldn't, though.
Yes, but you'd be amazed how many would.
Well, you might pick up
a
rifle, but you might be rubbish. You might be a rubbish
You go
shot.
through military training. You go through a short camp of military training, like they have done in Ukraine.
Well, what's that?
Use Ukraine as an example.
That's exactly what national service is, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ukraine probably do have national service, as do Israel and a lot
Israel
of these countries.
do.
Exactly.
I'm not sure about Ukraine.
Exactly.
Probably they have now.
Google it. Right, let's welcome our Great British Voices. Their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing today. I've got 4 of you. Right, I'm going to start with Julie Ford in Bedfordshire. Julie Ford, is it time to bring back compulsory national service, either military or the other side of it as well?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I know that we have had this conversation many times before on this debating panel in different guises, but I'm 100% for it, because although I get what Danny is saying, you know, there are gentle folk out there now of a disposition that may be traumatised by a little bit of conflict. But they're quite happy to sit on their gaming stations, killing everybody on their games. I don't really see it's much different. But ultimately, there is no discipline in this world anymore. There is no respect. There is no loyalty. National service doesn't have to mean they're on the front line.
Exactly.
There are so many jobs in the military that they could do that doesn't mean they have to go to war. I am 100% for it.
Brilliant. Dan Bryan, you're there in Hull. What do you think?
I had all my thought processes all done, and then you said Nambo, and that was it. I've lost it. I don't think anything should be compulsory, but I do think a lot of people would benefit from the discipline. And if the armed forces and a career in the armed forces was made more attractive, maybe it would attract more people in the first place. But the problem is, like every other great institution in this country, it's gone down the woke route.
Well, let's hope it doesn't, because that will have to be stamped out, won't it? Let's go to Julie Shaw. She's there in Bridlington. Or Birdlington. Is it Bridling or Bird? Brid, it is, isn't it?
Bridlington.
That's what I thought. Somebody's written Birdlington.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right, Private Nanjiman. You've got it exactly right. We should definitely bring back national service.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no patriotism in this country amongst the young ones. There's no camaraderie, no sense of camaraderie. We've got a lost generation of boys and girls, teenagers, who don't know where they're going. But my worry is, half a job Sunak ain't going to do it right. He's not going to pay them for the other service. That's going to be free. And there's no criminal element to it if they say, no, I'm not doing it.
No,
There's
exactly.
no sanctions whatsoever.
Well, listen, I'm going to have to move on because your line's a little bit tricky. Over to John Reid, lastly, in Kidderminster. Quickly, John, you've got about 30 seconds.
OK, Nana. Well, on June the 23rd, I'm doing some stand-up comedy in Birmingham. I think we should have Rishi as the star act. He's an absolute comedian. This is ridiculous. When was it ever debated that we might bring this back? When did he ever put it to Parliament? When did he ever talk about it before now? It's just a ruse to get some attention on him today, because we can't pay much attention to him today because he's taken the day off, hasn't he? He's cleared off and he's not around. But as soon as he comes back, I'm sure most people will see the comedy this is. No, I don't agree with it at all. Absolutely not.
All right, thank you very much, John Reid in Kidderminster, Julie Shaw in Bridlington, also Dan Bryan in Hull and Julie Ford in Bedfordshire. That's their thoughts. What are yours? GBViews at gbnews.com/your say. Coming up, the general election ruining Wimbledon. What's happening? Let's talk more about that next, though, Supplement Sunday. We're going to discuss some of the news stories that have caught our eye.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. Temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of the week, unfortunately we're still going to see low pressure remaining in charge. But there are hints as we head towards Thursday, this area of high pressure will begin to topple in. And that may well set us up for a little bit more in the way of brightness, especially across the west. But in the meantime, Tuesday, Wednesday certainly remaining fairly showery, temperatures around average for the time of year.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, good evening. It's time for Supplement Sunday, the part of the show where my panel and I discuss the stories that caught their eye. Right, I'm going to start with you, Danny. Your supplement, please.
Yeah, this is something you touched on at 3 o'clock. BBC weather presenter and her family are kicked off a flight because the daughter has a peanut allergy.
Yeah.
And the mother was asking the fellow passengers, please don't eat peanuts, please don't eat peanuts. My daughter's anaphylaxis and all of that. Well, if she's so concerned, she should put on one of those medical COVID masks.
It doesn't work like that for a peanut allergy.
Yeah, of course it does. It's airborne.
Yeah,
it can't be any smaller than COVID.
Yeah, but you're on an airline. Although airline air is very good because it recycles
exactly
every few seconds.
Yeah,
but still, you don't want somebody having an anaphylactic shock in an airplane.
Of course you don't.
Yeah.
But if it's that serious, you should wear some medical prevention, like a mask. If it's that,
why can't people just be told on an announcement not to eat peanuts?
Yeah, because people may disobey.
Easy.
People may disobey and say, sod that, I'm going to have a peanut.
Apologies for the language there, but listen, people might just, you could just simply say... all she was asking was the pilot to make an announcement.
No, I know, but people
why didn't he just do that?
Yeah, but because people may not agree and say, I'm just going to have a peanut anyway. No, but that's my point. You can't trust people. You've got to wear a mask.
No. Christine Hamilton.
I'm not entering into this because I did. My story is much more fun. My story is about Marmite.
Yes.
Marmite.
Yes, what about Marmite?
There's been a poll of GB News viewers about a whole raft of things, and right at the end it says GB News viewers are far more likely to be fans of Marmite than the overall population, i.e. 38% of GB viewers love Marmite, whereas only... No, I've got that the wrong way round. 49% of GB viewers love Marmite and only 39% of normal people.
I love Marmite.
I love Marmite.
And Bovril.
That's not even 100% then.
Yeah, don't
49 and 38.
What are you doing?
87.
I'm sorry, I'm advertising Marmite. Other spreads are available, but they're not as nice.
Not horrible sandwich.
Bovril, Vegemite, all that sort of stuff.
Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, will Labour's planned tax raid destroy the private education in Britain? According to our Twitter poll, 84% of you say yes, 16% of you say no. This could be a bad curveball for Keir Starmer. I also asked, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? According to our Twitter poll, 58% of you say yes, 42% of you say no. It's all a bit Brexity. Well, I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also a huge thank you to you at home for your company. It's been a pleasure as ever. I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place, Saturday at 3. Neil Oliver is next. I'll leave you with the weather. Have a fabulous week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it does look like it's going to remain fairly unsettled across the country. Further spells of rain and showers. It's all courtesy of this area of low pressure, which unfortunately is not going to go very far as we move through the rest of this bank holiday weekend. So as we end Sunday, plenty of rain and showers out there. Some of these showers still quite heavy and thundery. Warnings are in force throughout the evening. But it will turn dry and clear across many parts of England and Wales. And under the clear skies, it will turn a little bit chilly. Temperatures falling into single figures here. But further north, under the cloud and rain, remaining fairly mild for the time of year. So we start Bank Holiday Monday off on a fairly bright and sunny note across many eastern and central parts of England. Further west across southwest England, parts of Wales, showers from the word go here. And further north across northern England and Northern Ireland, quite a grey start, some outbreaks of rain. Similar story really for southern Scotland, risk of some persistent rain here for a time. Where further north across Scotland, some brightness around, but also a little bit of mist and murk too. Moving towards lunchtime, many of us will see the risk of a few showers. Across many southern and central parts of the country, the showers should be a little bit fewer and lighter compared to today, where further north still the risk of some thundery downpours, especially across northeastern parts of Scotland. And for all of us, it'll be a little bit of a cooler day compared to today. I think at best the high teens across the south. Then looking ahead towards the middle part of